Chapter 43-28. After Wu Jianxian left, there were many whispered discussions in the main hall of the Starry Sword sect. Benevolence is not in power. Although the Lord Sovereign is strong, he is too kind after all and is not decisive enough. That's right, that's the case for women. After all, it's less male. Well, now the Temple of Life has blatantly provoked us, and we ended up silent. Didn't it make the whole universe laugh? Several elders whispered, shaking their heads and sighing and discussing. Among the crowd, the only thin man wearing black, with very thin lips, said nothing. He raised his head to look at Wu Jiangxian's back, and a sneer was drawn from the corner of his mouth. Shinkong Zhenzong, the Lord's dormitory. Wu Jianxian sat on a bench with her eyes closed, Jian Qing Chan standing behind her, gently rubbing her temples for her. Master, do you have any troubles? Jian Shi Chan said quietly. Wu Jianxian opened his eyes when he heard the words, and there was a hint of exhaustion in his eyes, and he said, Qing Chan, you are with me, not an outsider. You say, what does it mean that the elder Ji Chan constantly contradicts the lead singer of this ancestor? Jian Shi Chan thought for a moment, a flash of hesitation flashed on his face, and finally bit his teeth. Master Zong, depending on the younger, Elder Jiu Chan doesn't see your woman's home and wants to force the palace to usurp him. After she finished speaking, when she saw Wu Jianxian didn't speak, she continued to say, Master Sovereign. Little courage to say something, you don't know, the elder Jiu Chan has been saying in the Zong how you are not, and now Zong there are many disciples within you who are very critical of you, waiting for you to show your strength and restore your reputation in the battle against the Temple of Life. Wu Jianxian frowned, heard the words and waved, okay, this lord knows, you can step back. Master Sovereign. Now it's time to fight against the Shrine of Life. It's your best to increase your reputation. Jian Shi Chan wanted to say more, and saw Wu Jianxian let go, and gave her an expressionless look, and said, I said just to step down, didn't you hear? When the sword-serving green cicada saw this, her heart suddenly became cold, knowing that she was getting worse, and she quickly lowered her head and said humbly, the Lord, please take a good rest, and the younger will retire. After that, Jian Shi Chan left. After she left, there was a moment of silence in the hall. Wu Jianxian stood up from the bench, walked in front of the bar window, and looked down at the unknown place of the starry sky with a hand, and there was a touch of complexity in her eyes. Why didn't she understand what everyone said in the hall today, and what Jian Shi Chan said just now? However, there was only one small toad, she didn't take it seriously. Taro, that sword can only get Taro Excalibur and Taro Sword Code. It is also half of your mantra. Want to come, you must recognize him, right? Wu Jianxian murmured. Inside the Temple of Life. As the Shrine of Life declared war on the 5 major forces, there was a storm in the universe, but in the Shrine of Life, there was abnormal peace. Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang didn't get along for a long time, so they started a new round of retreat. Jian Wushuang knows that everything now is just the beginning. Only when he becomes stronger, can he protect himself in the face of the next storm. What is that? Jian Wushuang lowered his head to look at the palm of his hand, where a strip of road converged densely, like a mountain range, rolling over and over, finally converging into a complete palm print. Everyone's palm print is different, so everyone understands the same way. Tao, don't ask, don't hear, don't follow, you can't find, even if I consult the Supreme of Bloodwave, he can't say one thing, he can only comprehend by himself. The Tao can only be created by yourself. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself. He knew that once he truly realized the Tao, it would be his chance to break through the supreme divine realm. After a long time, Jian Wushuang sighed lightly, wanting to comprehend that staying in the Temple of Life and Enlightenment, there is no role at all, only to go out to see the mountains and the sea, watch the tide ebb and flow, east-facing Flint, and experience the cool world. Only 100 human beings have the opportunity to truly understand the Taoism, it seems. It's time to go out for a walk. At the same time, in the far north of the universe, in the Dead Star domain, one of the 9 taboos. Hey! A faint beam of yellow light suddenly penetrated the endless nebula and mist, spreading out from the inside to form a long cosmic passage. Immediately, I saw a terrifying cosmic warship slowly moving out of this dead star field. The shape of this space battleship is extremely horrible. It is actually composed of a keel of dragon bones, like a bone dragon, which traverses the starry sky. 1, 2, 3. 9 bone dragon battleships sail out of the dead stars. They were juxtaposed, and the momentum immediately swept across 9 days and 10 places. In an instant, within 1,000,000 miles, countless bite-eating beasts wandering in the fissures of the void shivered, as if they saw the ancestor of the king, whispered in a low voice, "Show court service." At this moment, on the deck in the middle of the 9 bone dragon battleships, the master of the Diwu temple, Black Feather, stood side by side with a young man wearing black armor. The evil-looking young man's eyes were faintly golden. On both sides of his skull, 2 rounded and branched antlers were born. His cultivation is much lower than the master of Diwu temple, but the coercion emitted from the inside out is not inferior to the master of Diwu temple. If Jian Wushuang is here, he will recognize that this evil young man is actually the dragon enforcer Long Jiu, who used to be in the Shinkong ancient road. Long Jiu, now the Temple of Life is surrounded by enemies in all directions, which is our best shot. We take this opportunity to kill the Temple of Life unexpectedly. The master of Diwu temple looked at the dragon law enforcer Long Jiu side by side and said with a smile. Long Jiu heard no expression and said coldly, "Why do our dragons need to be surprised?" After that, Long Jiu waved. "Let's go, the Temple of Life." Rumble. Suddenly, 9 keel warships slowly sailed away from the far north. On this day, a sound like a decree sounded in the starry sky of the entire universe. Xian. The sword of life Jingu sword is unparalleled, and wantonly slays the people of the Wulong tribe, and confess his death. The Shrine of Life as its gate teaches Wufang and commits the crime of default. He surrenders the sword without a pair of skulls within 3 days, at the same time acknowledges the default to the entire universe, and apologizes to the dragons. If not, after 15 days, the dragons will personally come to the door and set foot on the Temple of Life, to serve the purpose. This sound emanated from the dead star field in one of the 9 forbidden places in the extreme north of the universe, and then exploded in the starry sky of the entire universe. The entire universe is horrified and horrified. Hundreds of dragons who have not been born in the chaos period are born. Chapter 43-29. The dragon race is born. This news is like dropping a bomb on a calm lake, and the whole universe is boiling and setting off thousands of waves. The dragon race is one of the most powerful races in the entire universe. It is rumored that at the beginning of the universe, when the world was still chaotic, countless chaotic spirits were interdependent. One of them was particularly overbearing. After devouring countless spirits, it gave birth to spiritual wisdom and shaped the flesh. This is the first dragon in the world, also known as Zulong. The ancestor dragon is the head of the Wanlong. The current dragon family is after the ancestor dragon. If the ancestor dragon had fallen in that catastrophe that year, the current dragons would still be the masters of the universe. Of course, although the ancestor dragons have fallen, they have the 2nd and 3rd generations of dragons, and their strength cannot be underestimated. Their heritage, far from being comparable to some top forces. Dragon race, Life Shrine cannot resist. At the same time, Temple of Life, Supreme Temple. Gav Supreme sat in the first place, expressionless. Several other Supremes stood under him, with extremely ugly expressions. They did not expect that when they declared war on the 5 major forces, the dragons were born at this time, and the goal was directed at Jian Wushuang. The atmosphere fell into a dignity like never before. The word long is like a big mountain, and it is overwhelmingly heavy in the hearts of everyone. Gai Fu Supreme, we are not afraid of the 5 forces, we can fight one another, but with a dragon, how should we deal with it? Bai Hu Supreme said in a deep voice. Even if he had always been violent, at this moment, the warfare in his eyes had disappeared. No one knows how long the Dragon Clan, which has been living for a long time, has been living for thousands of years in the hidden world. The strength of the dragons alone was far from being able to resist in the Shrine of Life that year. Yeah, Lord Gav, once the dragons come to the door, what can we resist in the Temple of Life? Another ordinary face with a long face said, his voice was full of anxiety. Gav Supreme did not speak, but lowered his eyes were opaque. Master Gafu, the dragons were born, and they went to the shrine. Once we deal with it a little carelessly, it will bring us to the Shrine of Life. The long-faced Supreme stepped forward and continued. After speaking, he glanced at the sword Wushuang standing at the end of the temple and sighed. Master Gafu, the fate of Jian Wushuang is fate, but the fate of other shrine disciples is also fate. Do you want to put the lives of other thousands of life shrines at risk for one sword? In this sentence, although he didn't point out what it means to cover the Supreme, which one is the dull one present? How can you not hear the meaning of this long-faced Supreme statement? To put it bluntly, there are only two ways before the Palace of Life. Or, as the dragon said, kill Jian Wushuang, hand in Jian Wushuang's head, and then apologize openly to the whole universe. Thither, it is for the sword unparalleled, the negative stubborn resistance. The other Supreme heard all the words in silence, bowed their heads and said nothing. Even if they have always loved Jian Wushuang, Bloodwave Supreme and Giant Axe Supreme, they opened their mouths to say what they wanted to say, and they were forcibly swallowed again. They love the swords, yes, but they are the chief and supremacy of the Palace of Life, and the whole Palace of Life is on their shoulders. Jian Wushuang stood at the end of the temple and looked at the silent people in the audience, and his heart was determined. He is responsible for everything that is happening now, so he is responsible for it. His sword is unparalleled. He is never a greedy for fear of death. He needs someone else to protect him. Life Shrine has done enough for him. He can't drag the Life Shrine to an endless place because of himself. Extreme Gav, Extremism Chinga said yes, hand me over, you can be me, in exchange for the safety of the Palace of Life. My sword is unparalleled. Sword stepped out, looked up and said to Gafu Supreme. But everyone looked back, looking at Jian Wushuang, and found that Jian Wushuang had a calm expression, clear eyes, and no intention of falsification. The long-faced man who had been called Qing Qing looked supreme, and arched his hand toward Jian Wushuang, sighing softly, Sword Wushuang, don't resent this seat. This seat was just helpless. Jian Wushuang smiled at him, nodded, and gestured to understand. Gav Extreme raised his head slowly, his eyes glanced across the faces of the temple. Even though his state of mind has not changed for many years, there is a wave of waves at this moment. Sword unparalleled. He spoke indifferently, the sword has no double-arched hands, he knows that it is time for him to die. Do you really want to sacrifice yourself to preserve the Temple of Life? Gafu Supreme raised his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang's face. Jian Wushuang nodded his head in reply. When everyone saw the situation, they all understood that it seemed that Supreme Lord Gap had already made a decision and planned to sacrifice the sword unparalleled. Somehow, when everyone sighed for a long time, they felt inexplicably blocked. Want to come? Jian Wushuang, who was personally executed by his elder Zongmin, must be uncomfortable in his heart? Supreme Gap nodded, just about to speak, and saw Supreme bite his teeth, as if he had made a decision, took the lead to say, Extreme Gap. I was personally introduced by Jian Wushuang, and I promised him to protect him for the first time in Chang'an. Now I want to watch him die. Sorry, I can't do it. Taking a deep breath, Supermex went on to say, Extreme Gav, the talent of this seat has come to an end. I'm afraid that he can only come to this step in his life. Basically, there is no possibility of breakthrough. But Sword Unparalleled is the most talented person since the birth of my life shrine. As long as he is there to give him time to grow up, I believe that he will surely push the life shrine to an unprecedented glory. Therefore, this seat is willing to die for Sword Wushuang. As soon as this sentence came out, the audience was moved. They did not expect that the Supreme Master of Blood would take Jian Wushuang to this point. Only the Great Axe Supreme knows Bloodwave Supreme has never received any disciples since his lifetime, and he has long seen Sword Unparalleled in his heart. Supreme blood. Jian Wushuang's heart was moved for a while, his nose was sour. His sword is unparalleled, how can he make a top and supreme grand, willing to die for him? Just then, Gav Supreme suddenly said, "When did the old man say, 'Let Jian Wushuang die'?" As soon as this remark was made, everyone in the audience couldn't help looking at each other and wondering, what does this mean? Chapter 43:30. Looking at the doubtful eyes of everyone, Gafu Supreme said slowly, "Since the palace of our life has been established by the Lord of the palace, the disciples in the palace can fight to death? If today, we will execute the sword without a pair of swords. If we encounter this kind of thing again in the future, do we have to execute other disciples to please other forces to protect the temple?" As soon as this remark came out, everyone was in the heart. "Master Gafu, you are right. If not, who of us wants to see Jian Wushuang die?" The Qingying Supreme raised his head and looked at Gafu Supreme. At the same time, he sighed in his heart, since he didn't want to be a wicked, then he would let him be the wicked. Gavo gave him a glance and said, "When did I say this? Is there no way?" After speaking, Gafu Supreme turned his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang. Shen said, "Jian Wushuang, you listen well. From today on, you are no longer a disciple of my life. This seat deprives you of your status as a disciple of the Palace of Life. You are only allowed to leave the Palace of Life today. You must not stay. You understand?" When it comes to the last sentence, Supreme Gev has already used a bit of power, like Huang Zhongda Lu ringing, deafening feedback. The words came as a shock. "Gov Supreme, I." Jian Wushuang's expression flickered, and he was about to speak. Seeing that Gafu Supreme's face sank, he scolded, "Don't you understand the words of this seat? From now on, you will no longer be a disciple of my life, and leave quickly." Looking at the cold and scowling expression of Gafu Supreme, Jian Wushuang's heart swayed for a while, and a warmth surged in his heart. He was not a fool, and what he meant by Supreme Gav he knew well. However, once they leave, will the dragons really easily let go of the Temple of Life? Go out. Gav Supreme shook his sleeves, a soft but powerful force, waved out, knocking the sword Wushuang from the Supreme Temple. Jian Wushuang hit the ground outside the temple fiercely. He struggled to stand up from the ground, his eyes turned to the Supreme Temple, his fists clenched involuntarily, and his nails fell deeply into the flesh. The next moment, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, resolutely turned, and swept away towards the sixth mountain. Inside the Supreme Temple. After Jian Wushuang left, the hall became silent. Everyone didn't speak, but the blood was supreme and a smile appeared in his heart. "Just leave, just leave." Extreme Gav, Jian Wushuang is gone. Then what shall we do? Qing Supreme took a deep breath, Shen said. Gav Supreme's severe expression had been alleviated. He glanced at Qing supremely and said calmly, "Qing Yan, it seems that after so many years of rest and recuperation, you have already worn away your blood. Only then did you just hear the word, dragon, and you were frightened." Gov Supreme, I. Qingying Supreme heard the words, his face suddenly changed slightly, and when he was about to speak, he saw that Gawaf waved his hand. "Well, no need to say any more. Although the dragon race is strong, what about it? Now Jian Wushuang is not a disciple of my life shrine, and has been expelled. If the dragon race wants to find trouble for him, he will go to the universe to find him, and my life, what does the palace have to do? Moreover." Gavri glanced over everyone's face, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. There was a sharp sense of sharpness on that old mottled face. The Lord of the Palace disappeared that year. Do you really think that the Lord of the Lord did not leave a few moves after the move? The words fell, everyone in the room was shocked. Everyone said no more. The sixth mountain, the manor where Jian Wushuang is located. Jian Wushuang stepped heavily into the compartment. "Fu Jun, are you okay?" Lung Wushuang seemed to have heard any news. When Jian Wushuang walked in, he quickly got up and asked anxiously, "I'm fine." Jian Wushuang shook his head, then took a deep breath and said, "Frosty, pack up and we leave here." "It is good." Lung Wushuang did not ask why she was in a hurry to leave. She has always been this character. As long as Jian Wushuang made the decision, she would not ask more. After a moment, Jian Wushuang put the cold as frost into the Fengshen monument and was going to leave. Walking in front of the gate of the Temple of Life, Jian Wushuang looked back. In the Temple of Life, many disciples looked at him with complex eyes, and their emotions were difficult to understand. I will definitely come back, definitely. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, and there was a determination in his eyes. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to leave, suddenly, a stream of light burst towards him. The streamer fell, revealing the bloodshot supreme figure. He came to see him off. Extreme blood in the hall today. Jian Wushuang arched his hand at him. After waiting for Jian Wushuang to finish, Sun Bo Sun waved his hand and smiled slightly. You and me, no need to say this. After a moment of pause, Bloodwave Supreme said, Jian Wushuang, if you go by this way, you are afraid of the dangerous frontier. You must be extremely careful. It is best to change your name and change your appearance. Jian Wushuang heard the words, nodded and said, I understand. Bloodwave Supreme said, turned over with his right hand, took out a scarlet jade card, and said, Jian Wushuang, this jade card has my 3-strike power. Please carefully close it. Ruo. If you really encounter a life and death crisis, the 3-strike force in this jade brand wants to save your life. Jian Wushuang is not an arrogant person, and when Yen took down this jade card, and nodded hard toward the Supreme of Blood. All words of thanks, no need to say more, are in my heart. Seeing a slight smile, Bloodwave Supreme continued and said, Take care of yourself when you go. By the way, Supreme Lord gave me a message for you. No matter what, your sword Wushuang will always be a disciple of my life. After a moment of pause, Bloodwave Supreme laughed. There are 9 kings of calamity, let me also tell you, don't die, he is waiting for you at the universe race, he also wants to try, dragon slay is what a taste. Jian Wushuang heard the words, his heart was moved for a while, and a lot of pride was poured out. Extreme blood, rest assured, I will not die. Okay, that sword is unparalleled, we will meet again in the future. Bloodwave Supreme patted Jian Wushuang's shoulder. Farewell to Jian Wushuang. Then I'm gone, Supreme Blood, you take care. The sword Wushuang strode away, he took the cold as frost, turned into a streamer, blasted towards the vast starry sky far away. I went today, regardless of the deadline, no matter the way back. He will be alone again, facing the sea of stars. Far away, the Temple of Life has turned into a small black spot, thousands of miles away. Jian Wushuang turned his head, took a deep look at the Palace of Life and Supreme Blood, and said in a silent voice, Meet again. Chapter 43-31. In the vast sky, a cosmic boat is quickly leaving the center. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the universe, looking through the black light mirror, watching the spacecraft constantly moving from bustling to deserted. The previous spacecraft, Jian Wushuang, is no longer in use. This spacecraft was obtained from the ring of Qiankuan after he did not know who was killed when he was on the ancient road of the starry sky. Frost, the 5 planets are in front, let's rest there. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. Sitting as cold as frost, he nodded after hearing the words and said, Okay. The 5 planetary domains, among the universe of thousands of star domains, can only be regarded as a very ordinary star domain, and the person with the highest strength in the star domain is just the ultimate dominator. Jian Wushuang fled this way, choosing mostly star fields like the 5 planetary domains. A few hours later, a pale blue sea of stars appeared in front of the sword without double sides, which was the 5 planetary domain. Arrived. Jian Wushuang stopped the spacecraft, and with a big wave of his hand, his appearance changed a little. I saw that he had a round beard on his handsome and cold face, his eyes became a little deeper, and his face became a bit more square. Although there were not many changes in the facial features, whoever stood at this moment in front of him, it is absolutely impossible to recognize the slightly rough client in front of him as a sword unparalleled. It's not over yet. Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and he saw that his relatively thin figure had grown taller as well. At first glance, where is the half-shadow of Jian Wushuang before, It is clearly a cosmic wave rover who has walked the universe for many years. Fu Jun, you can't even recognize me in this dress. Leng Rushuang glanced at Jian Wushuang, covering his mouth and urging a narrow smile. Jian Wushuang heard a cold, frosty look and said, "This journey is extremely dangerous, so we must cover it up." Leng Rushuang heard a sneer and smirked, his right hand also waved, and his appearance suddenly changed. I saw a few fine lines on her original beautiful face. The purple fringed dress on her body was also transformed into a red dress, with a sharp chin and a strong Joan nose. The indignant air that can't eat the fireworks on the earth has a little more heroic female spirit. The two stood together, and it was like a couple marching together in the universe. The sword was unparalleled and nodded with satisfaction. He waved his right hand, closed the spacecraft, twisted his neck, and walked towards the five-planetary field as cold as frost. The largest city in the five-planetary domain is named Wuxingcheng, named after the five elements Shenzong, the strongest force in the five-planetary domain. There are 4 major families under it, which are jointly responsible for the 5 elements. Jian Wushuang put the Wu weapon sword into the ring of Qian Kun. After the Tai Luo divine sword was covered with the supreme seal, the seal was more effective than the Shen divine seal. No breath was revealed at all. For the sake of insurance, Jian Wushuang was again in Tai. There is a layer of rust on the sword of Luo Shenjian. No one can see it at this moment. This iron sword with an ordinary and rusty texture will be the Taro sword that has set off a reign in the universe recently. Jian Wushuang wore a large black robe, hid the Tai Luo Excalibur under the black robe, and walked into the 5 elements city step by step as cold as frost. The guardian soldiers of the 5 element city are 2 monks who have entered the first level to dominate the realm. When they saw Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang coming, they suddenly stopped with the halberds in their hands and asked expressionlessly, "2 people, newcomers to the 5 element city, all need to register their identity information. May I ask how the 2 names are?" Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang heard the words, looked at each other, and then faintly replied, "The sword is not abandoned, and the second series dominates." Ling Ruqing, the first level dominates. After the 2 have spoken, they will suppress the cultivation to the second and first series to dominate the realm, exhaling breath. After hearing the words, the 2 defending soldiers nodded, and after slightly sensing the breath of Jian Wushuang and the coldness, they registered the name and let it go. There were no twists and turns. Jian Wushuang is now re-entering the universe. Naturally, he can no longer use the original name. Even the blood sword and swordsman he used, naturally, he will no longer use it for the sake of insurance. As cold as frost, as his wife, in order to avoid people searching for swords and swords, he also used a pseudonym. In the 5-element city, it is quite lively. After all, it is not too far away from the prosperous area of the universe. The streets in the city are crowded with people and bustle. Divine power is transformed into divine knowledge, spreading out overwhelmingly, covering the entire 5-planetary domain. Under his induction, the strongest in the 5 planetary domains are just a few top ultimate dominators. Most of them are, as he showed, most of the 1st to 5th dominated. Quietly withdrawing the divine power, Jian Wushuang lowered his head, pulled the wide black robe hood, covered most of his face, barely exposed his chin, and walked towards a restaurant. This time leaving the Temple of Life, Jian Wushuang didn't know where to go. He only knew that he had to see the millions of scenery in the world, to see the joys and sorrows of the world, and love and hatred avenue to Jane. Perhaps when he truly understood the universe, it was when he realized the avenue and broke through the supreme. Entering the restaurant, it was filled with high friends, filled with people from various star domains. They sat together and talked to each other about the recent events in the universe. Jian Wushuang's expression was dull, and he sat next to the window as cold as frost, asked for a pot of spirit wine, and gently simmered. "Did you hear? Dragon warships are almost at the Temple of Life." "What? It's only been a few days, how could the dragons be so fast?" "Well, how can the dragons spend their lives as ordinary people? I just don't know how to deal with the Temple of Life. As far as I guess, until now, the Palace of Life has been reluctant to surrender sword unparalleled, for fear it will be difficult. Just let me say, Jian Wushuang is a evil star, and the Temple of Life stands tens of thousands of chaos ages. As a result, Jian Wushuang is the only one who has made enemies on all sides and offended the dragons, causing such a disaster. That's right. What is the first genius of the universe? If the Supreme Masters who have the Temple of Life kept Swordsman's sword, it is estimated that he would have died too long. Your Excellency, Jian Wushuang is just relying on the Tai Luo Divine Sword. It is estimated that the real combat power is not as high as mine. If I have the Tai Luo Divine Sword, it will definitely be 10 million times stronger than Jian Wushuang. There was a sound of discussion, one after another. Everyone in the restaurant was discussing the birth of the dragons and the sword unparalleled. When almost everyone talked about Jian Wushuang, their tone was full of glee and joy. This is true of the human heart, only to see that others are worse than themselves, and that others are not better than themselves. I don't like sending charcoal in the snow, I love falling down the rocks alone. Chapter 43-32. Where could Lung Rushuang hear his husband? As others said, there was a flash of coldness in his eyes. When he wanted to say a few words, he saw Jian Wushuang stretch out his hand and pat it on the back of her hand. Anyway, Jian Wushuang lowered his glass and shook his head. Fu Jun, but they say you so. Lung Rushuang frowned. Before she finished speaking, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and said, there are tens of thousands of rumors in the world, what do you think of it? It is enough to be good. Well, take a break for a moment or two, and let's leave. Lung Rushuang heard the words and thought for a while, then spread his face and smiled and said, everything is right. A moment later, when Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang planned to leave, an evil young man wearing a genie and holding a folding fan and dressed as a rich man stepped into the restaurant. He first looked at the restaurant full of frowns, and his eyebrows frowned slightly, then his eyes turned, and he saw the cold frost sitting at the window with Jian Wushuang. A flash of light suddenly appeared in his eyes, and a smile appeared in the corner of his mouth. Towards the two people, the position is full here, let's squeeze a place together, don't you mind? The evil young man opened the folding fan and shook it, smiling slightly. Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang heard the words, his brows could not help but wrinkle, and he said, you can sit here by yourself, we will go now. After that, Jian Wushuang and Frost were going to leave. The two left the Temple of Life to avoid the pursuit of the dragons, and they did not want to cause more trouble. Slow. Just then, the evil young man reached out and grabbed the frosty wrist, smiling. I think the two are born, they should have just come to the 5 planets domain, right? I want to come and the two do not know the 5 planets domain, so I just sat down and talked together. After speaking, he seemed to have forgotten something, and patted his head. Yes, I almost forgot to introduce him. Master Xia is dominated by Shuanghe, the chief elder of the 5 Elements sect, and he is also my father. Having said that, the folding fan in his hand was opened, and the fan was fanned in front of his chest. However, he didn't notice that the coldness of Frost had already become so cold when this man grabbed his wrist. She said coldly, open. As soon as the remarks came down, the temperature of the entire restaurant dropped by dozens of degrees suddenly like a chilly cold wind, and the evil young man stiffened, and then unconsciously let go of his hand. Lung Rushuang stepped back to Jian Wushuang. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's smile on his face had completely converged, and the killing in his eyes flashed away. This time, he intends to act low-key, but it does not mean that even his beloved wife can be indifferent to being bullied by others. The evil charm young man gradually recovered after a moment of distraction. As if I realized that the woman in front of me was just a fright, I lost my face, and immediately sneered at the table. 2. Don't toast without eating or drinking. Snapped. As soon as he clapped his hands, for a while, 7 or 8 5th-ranking masters rushed in, first glancing at Jian Wushuang with a bad look, and then arched toward the evil young man. My son. The evil young man heard the words, closed the fan in his hand, squinted his eyes and said, surround them. Yes. But suddenly, this group of 5th-ranking masters spread out, enclosing Jian Wushuang and the cold as frost, blocking the back path of Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, the drinkers suddenly shrank their pupils, looking at Xiang Jinshuang and the cold, frosty eyes, full of sympathy, shaking his head. Well, these two people provoked the largest second ancestor in these 5 planetary domains, but I'm afraid it will be difficult today. In these 5 planetary domains, the 5 Elements God sect is the only one, and this person is also the elder of the 5 Elements God sect. He has always been much favored. In these 5 elements, he has done a lot of ridiculous deeds. These two people provoked him. You're in big trouble. Yeah, it would be okay if the two were strong. The result is only one who dominates the first series and the second series. I'm afraid it is impossible to escape the clutches of the second ancestor. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. The sword had no expression on both sides, looking at the evil young man, said calmly, I only give you one chance, let it go now. When the evil young man heard the words, he was not afraid, but there was a look of interest on his face, and he replied, Give me only one chance. Then you listen, my son only gave you one chance. You are now out of the 5 planets area by yourself, leaving the couple around you. This son can still not blame otherwise. Before he finished, Jian Wushuang had already pointed his finger towards his brows. You have no chance. When the surrounding 5th-level masters saw the situation, they didn't care at all. In their view, the sword is unparalleled, but the 2nd-level masters dominated, and this evil young man has already had the 4th-level masters as the sword. Wushuang is just the 2nd-level master, purely insulting himself. However, the evil young man with a playful smile on his face was frozen solidly. At this moment, he seemed to see the image of the destruction of the world, and his eyes were astonished like ghosts. An indescribable terror struck him. This great horror he had never felt in his father Shuanghe Lord, even the Lord of the 5 Elements God sect, far worse than that. He wanted to speak, but like a big invisible hand, choked his throat, his face flushed red, but he could not spit out a word. Next moment, Jian Wushuang's fingertips stopped at his eyebrow at a distance of 3 inches. However, a more terrifying and weird scene appeared, and there was no sound, but the evil young man was from head to toe, silent, and directly turned into the most empty nothingness. After only half a break, the evil young man was destroyed. Suddenly, the entire restaurant opened his mouth wide, his eyes dumbfounded, and turned into a dead silence. The masters of the 5th ranks stared at Jian Wushuang in astonishment, speechless. It wasn't until a long time ago that he saw a 5th-level master, and he reached out his hand and tremblingly pointed at the sword Wushuang, and he did not dare to make a channel. You actually killed the only son of Elder Shuanghe? You are dead. And the two people gathered by countless horror eyes, whether it was Jian Wushuang or cold as frost, looked as usual. They couldn't bear a wave in their hearts, as if they had just done a trivial matter. A message was conveyed to the 5 Elements Shenzong in the center of the 5 Elements city at an extremely rapid rate. And at the same time, deep in the universe, outside the Palace of Life. 1, 2, 3. 9 dragon warships sailed slowly towards the Temple of Life. In the end, the 9 dragon-shaped warships exuding terrifying coercion quietly hovered in front of the gate of the Temple of Life. The majesty swept across the starry sky, slamming the quartet like a stormy sea, smashing nearly 10,000 miles around, crushing them all, and setting off numerous space storms. Here comes the dragon. Chapter 43:33. When the dragon army came outside the Palace of Life, the entire universe was boiling, and they did not want to miss this shocking battle and rushed to the battle of the appearance of the Palace of Life. Everyone looked at the 9 bone dragon battleships that struck the starry sky from afar. They were all trembled in their hearts, shocked by the coercion of the dragons that day. Especially on the bone dragon battleship, the black muzzle formed by the dragon's mouth was even more chilling. This is the dragon race. The dragons are really great. Just these 9 space battleships, each with a supreme blow. The rank of the rank has reached the limit of the universe law, and because this is the reason for the space battleship, in terms of value, we must far beyond the limits of other cosmic laws, it is impossible to estimate. You say, how many generations will the dragons come over this time? This is hard to say, but based on my guess, I want to face the Temple of Life. How can I get the 4th generation of dragons? The Temple of Life, countless monks who came from all directions, began to discuss. They know that if there is a problem with the Shrine of Life today, they will be destroyed by fear. 9 dragon warships were quietly suspended outside the Temple of Life, and did not rush to shoot, as if they were giving the Temple of Life the last chance. The Temple of Life, inside the Supreme Temple. The hall full of Supreme, all stand upright. Extreme Gav, the dragons are here. Bloodwave Supreme stood on the side of Gafu Supreme, and said softly. Gav Supreme sat in the first position, eyes closed slightly, and the fingers of his right hand gently rubbed the seat armrests. Hearing that, he slowly opened his eyes, and his old and dim eyes were gray and he could not see the slightest emotion. Let's go and meet the dragons. The words fell, and Gaver stood up and walked towards the Temple of Life. The other 4 Supreme Masters, as well as other Supreme Masters such as King of the 9th Calamity, followed without a word. Today's incident, there is no bottom in everyone's heart. Even they are ready to die. Alas! With a soft ring, dozens of figures, including Supreme Gap, appeared in the void outside the Palace of Life. Immediately, there was a commotion in the crowd. Here comes the person from the Temple of Life. The show is about to begin. Look at it, there is no sword without a match. The discussion sounded loudly, and Gawaf didn't manage it. Even the master of the Diwu Shrine on the deck and Long Jiao, the law enforcer of Dragon Clan, did not manage it, but looked straight towards the middle dragon warship. Looking around, he said slightly, "Guess come to the door, I'll wait for a miss." In the middle of the dragon warship, there was a moment of silence. Immediately I heard a deep, hoarse sound, like a sound of iron and stone, sounded from the space warship in the middle. "Gav, how about a sword without 2? The voice fell, clearly not using any power, but it sounded in everyone's heart at the same time. Hearing this voice, the 4 chief executives behind Gafu Supreme had their pupils shrunk. This voice is familiar to anyone who has experienced the battle of that catastrophe. Unexpectedly, this time the dragon family even sent him out. Thinking of this, the presence of the Supreme was sinking in my heart. Gav supremely replied, "Dragon, it is not my Palace of Life that is unwilling to surrender Jian Wushuang, but Jian Wushuang escaped from the Palace of Life that day when we were not aware of it. We, the Temple of Life, are also looking for sword unparalleled." Escape! The voice that had spoken before had not spoken. I saw the dragon ruler Long Jiao, his eyes narrowed, and said sneerly, "If you have so many divine beings in your life, you won't be able to see a sword unparalleled? Let him run away? You can just lie to the kids if you use this kind of crap, to lie to us dragons? Gav, I tell you, if your Shrine of Life can't deliver the sword unparalleled today, then be prepared for the whole life shrine to be buried for the sword unparalleled." After speaking, he stood up against his hands, his chest was upright, and he was endlessly overbearing and proud. Although he has only ordinary supreme practice, he is not afraid of facing Gap. "Little guy, are you threatening the old man?" Gav's supremely cloudy eyes flashed a faint light, indifferent to his mouth. The law enforcer Long Jiao heard that, and his face was even more sneer, but he was not afraid to ask back, "What about threatening you?" "Huh." After waiting for him to speak, Gafu Supreme sighed, and reached out to the Dragon 9 and kept pointing. "If your ancestors came to say this to the husband, but a 5th-generation bloodlined dragon tribe of yours, would you dare to threaten the husband?" Suddenly, countless methods emerged. A giant finger broke through the sky. This giant finger reached thousands of feet and instantly covered the entire starry sky. A million-mile planet was in front of this finger. Small as dust. It is impossible to use any words to describe the horror of this finger. It is a majestic force beyond everyone's imagination. "How dare you?" When the law enforcement officer Long Jiao saw this, he immediately fell into an ice cellar and was shocked. Under this finger, he actually felt that he was no longer a dragon clan that overlooked the universe, but an ant who could be crushed to death at any time, looking up at the starry sky. He didn't expect that this governance would dare to shoot at him after their dragon army came down. www. Novel. Just then, the hoarse, old voice from the space battleship in the middle before that continued to spread. Enough. Next moment. Then he saw a dragon arm covered with black dragon scales and borne with 7 claws. He protruded from the dragon warship and grabbed him with a finger towards GV. The arms of the 7-clawed dragon are covered with scars, full of sword and axe sword marks, and the bones are deeply visible, making it impossible to imagine how much the master of this 7-clawed dragon arm has encountered. This grab was equally horrible. It shattered all the void around it, and where it scratched, countless black hole vortexes were formed. Each vortex formed on this grab. Each vortex turned out to be a universe. Storm. Suddenly, this finger and this claw robbed all the brilliance of the world, whether it is the 9 dragon-fighting warships, or the blood wave supreme behind the supreme, etc., all appear to be dim. In the eyes of everyone, everything disappeared, leaving only this finger and this claw. Gaifu, you and I were allied, but the rules were the rules. Sword Wushuang killed my dragon clan, so he had to pay him back. One life is one life, and what my dragons do is not excessive. Gav Supreme heard the words, his eyelids were raised slightly, and his expression was blank. The old man said, Jian Wushuang is no longer a disciple of my life. If you want to find him, you will find him. Huh! At the next moment, the arm of the 7-clawed dragon and the gigantic fingers of the Supreme were slammed together. Suddenly, the universe shook wildly. A startling war has begun. Chapter 43-34. Within the 5 planets domain, the 5 elements city. After Jian Wushuang killed the evil young man, he didn't pay much attention to it, and as cold as frost came out of the restaurant, he planned to leave. The 5th ranks dominated, and originally wanted to stop, but after being glanced at by Jian Wushuang, they all stood upright with sweat on their foreheads. Numerous large beads of sweat appeared on the forehead. Go and leave countless discussions. Who is this person? He can actually dominate the 2nd-level Master Xiao as a blow, and kill the 4th-level Master Xiaowei by one finger? I don't know, but when I passed the city gate before, I seemed to hear this person's introduction. What is the name of the sword? Swords don't give up? I haven't heard of them. I guess they are from other star domains. Anyway, this person is in big trouble. The Lord of the Winds is the only son of the elder of the 5 elements god sect. The elder has always loved him. Once he knows that the Lord of the Winds is killed by this person, he will definitely be with this. People never die. Yes, the elder is the top ultimate master who has been immersed in the ultimate dominating realm for many years. If the sword is not abandoned, even if it is strong, it is only the 2nd-level master. It is definitely not an opponent of the elder. Inside the restaurant, many drinkers looked at the back of Jian Wushuang leaving and shook their heads to discuss. On the Imperial Road, when Jian Wushuang planned to turn into a fascination, when he left the 5 planetary domain, he suddenly seemed to sense something, and his actions suddenly abruptly. Did it start? Jian Wushuang raised his head, looked towards the direction of the Temple of Life. His face turned into a complex. If he could, he would like to stay in the Temple of Life at this moment and fight alongside Bloodwave Supreme and others. But he knew that he could not do so, otherwise it would be a waste of the good intentions of Gafu Supreme and others. Father, don't think about it, they will be fine. Lung Rushuang seemed to notice the strangeness of Jian Wushuang, reached out and gently took his fingers, and said with a soft voice. Jian Wushuang sighed in his heart, nodded, and made clear. Let's go. At the same time, inside the 5 elements sect in the center of the 5 elements city, an old man with white hair is sitting cross-legged and silently refining divine power. This person is the same as the evil young father who was killed by Jian Wushuang before, and the elder of the 5 elements sect, dominated by Shuanghe. Just then he suddenly received a message in his mind. Didn't Taizhan keep protecting the wind close to him? Doubtful, Lord Shuanghe opened his eyes and read the newsletter. After a moment, Shuang's dominion turned into a rage, and he was about to crack. Fenger! Ha! The next moment, Shuang's figure disappeared instantly, turned into a streamer, and shot towards the restaurant. Just a few breaths away, his figure appeared in the restaurant where Jian Wushuang had stayed before. Suddenly, the entire restaurant seemed to be transformed into a sea of blood, which was permeated by strong killings. Shuanghe dominated Tiking's expression to the extreme. First he looked around the restaurant, then looked at the fifth-level master who was protecting the evil young man next to him. What about the two who killed Fenger? The fifth ranks eventually dominated, and they fell to their knees directly in fear, shaking back. Return to the elder, then, that person has left in front of Ban's Huxiang. It seems to be leaving the 5 planets. Want to escape? Shuang's expression suddenly became dark, and he said, "Kill my son, you will kill you if you escape to the end of the earth." Having said that, Shuanghe master planned to get up and chase. Just when his right foot just stepped out of the restaurant threshold, he seemed to remember something, and turned his head to look coldly at the final masters of these 5th graders. "My son is dead. Do you still want to live alone? Buy my son." Suddenly, Shuanghe dominated his right hand, and countless divine powers poured out. In the panic of begging, he directly shot the master of the 5th grade of this title into meat sauce. After doing all this, Shuanghe dominated Lingheng, and once again turned into a streamer, swept away in the direction that Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang left. At the gate of the 5 Elements city, Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang said nothing and planned to leave. "Hey!" Just then, a streamer fell suddenly and appeared in front of the two. The streamers dissipated, revealing the figure of Shuanghe dominant. "Meet the elder! Meet the elder!" The who guarded the city will see this, and immediately kneel on one knee, shouting in congratulations. Shuanghe dominated with a cold expression. He didn't even look at the city guard, a pair of bloodshot eyes, and looked at Xiang Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang. The old man asks you, in front of Ban's Huxiang, "But you too killed a 4th-level master in the restaurant?" Jian Wushuang heard his frown, and arched his hand and said, "Yes, it's me. May I ask you anything?" "What's up?" Shuanghe dominated and heard a furious smile, and Sinhan said, "You killed my son, and come to ask me what's wrong?" Jian Wushuang heard the words and immediately understood that the old man in front of me was afraid that the elder of the 5 Elements sect. Everything you want to reason about is that he provokes me first, and I have given him a chance. He doesn't cherish it. That's no wonder to me. Jian Wushuang calmly replied, "Reason? In this world, whoever is strong is the reason." Sovereign only felt a blaze of fire rushing directly from the soles of his feet to the top of his head, staring at Jian Wushuang, saying bitterly, "Boy, you listen, this seed is going to crush your body inch by inch, pull out your soul, burn the fire with the fire day and night, and then deprive the around you, and send it to the world greenhouse, every day." Before he finished, Jian Wushuang had already revealed his intentions, and said lowly, "You wanna die? Huh?" Jian Wushuang's right hand was shot instantly, and he pressed at the old man's head in front of him. A sharp sword exploded instantly, strangling the old man thousands of times. Suddenly, the bodies of the 2 rivers dominated the body, as if someone were striking a heavy drum, and the body continued to make a loud bang. Suddenly, Shuanghe dominated his body and trembled madly, and the body was crushed thousands of times by the sword. It was not until after a few breaths that the body dominated by Shuanghe exploded and turned into countless flesh. Beep! At the moment when Shuanghe dominated the fall, the entire 5 Elements city sounded an alarm and issued a rapid beeping sound. The next moment, I saw countless figures, rising from the 5 Elements Shinzong, and rush towards the sword Wushuang quickly. Whispers. It's not over yet, an air of 5 elements that seems to come from chaos, gushing from all corners of the 5 Elements city, like a lid, covering the entire 5 Elements city, blocking all the way. Jian Wushuang saw this, his expression suddenly gloomy to the extreme. Suddenly, one of the incomplete 3-legged tripods located in the sword warrior's Chenkuan ring, Kuku, moved. Chapter 43-35. Okay. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and immediately felt the vision of the torn bronze ancient tripod in Qiankuan Ring. This incomplete three-legged tripod is exactly the one that was obtained after Jian Wushuang cut and killed the prisoner dragon on the ancient road of Shinkong with a broken leg, and there are countless intricate and mysterious runes of bronze on the tripod. Speaking of, after this bronze ancient tripod was obtained, Jian Wushuang also spent a lot of research and trials, but no matter how he went to test and research, how much divine power was injected into it, this bronze ancient tripod still did not respond at all. His divine power was like a mud ox entering the sea, and he couldn't set off any waves. Over time, Jian Wushuang no longer cares. I did not expect that this bronze ancient tripod that had not been moved for a long time had a reaction in these 5 elements. How is this going? Jian Wushuang frowned, let go of his divine power, and felt the difference in the 5-element city. The next moment, Jian Wu's eyes closed. Oh, just breath. He felt that in the void of the 5-element city, there was a hint of Otoki air. The spirit of Atsuki is extremely thin. If he had not killed the Shuanghe Lord, the 5 elements god sect opened the moat, even he could not feel it. Ojus gas belongs to the innate air of the 5 elements at the time of chaos, which belongs to the universe yet to be born. At that time, the universe was full of various 5-element chaos. It was precisely these 5 elements that existed at the end. Chaos only gradually evolved, and finally turned into mountains and rivers, stars and black holes, forming what the universe looks like today. The 5 elements of air are divided into innate chaotic air and acquired air. What the sword felt without both sides was a very thin innate OG spirit. Do not allow Jian Wushuang to think, the countless figures rising from the sky of the 5 elements Shenzong have fallen, enclosing Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang in layers. On their white robe cuffs, there was a round of 5-element patterns embroidered by the disciples of the 5 elements Shenzong. They felt the divine power fluctuations dominated by the surrounding Shuanghe, and suddenly a look of anger appeared in their eyes, staring at the sword unparalleled. However, they did not act lightly. It didn't take long to see a majestic middle-aged man with a pair of thick eyebrows striding towards the sword unparalleled. The middle-aged man had an ugly expression, and step by step, the disciples of the 5 elements god sect retreated automatically to make way for the middle-aged man. Okay. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked at the middle-aged man. This man was trained to be almost invincible. In his previous sense of consciousness, he was the strongest of the 5 planetary domains. Do-and-T guess, Jian Wushuang also knows this person is estimated to be the lord of the 5 elements sect, the 5 elements lord. Looking back, Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, and he didn't care about it, let alone the 5 elements gods. Even if all the 5 planetary domains were tied together, it was not enough for him to kill with one sword. Now, although he is still the ultimate dominating realm, he is no longer comparable to the master. Now, his opponent only has the power of supreme level. In the realm of domination, his sword is unparalleled, and he is invincible to all races. After approaching the middle-aged man, he looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, and there was a hint of jealousy in the bottom of his eyes. Then, the middle-aged man took a deep breath and arched. In the Lord of the 5 Elements God sect, Your Excellency can call me Lord of the 5 Elements God. Dare to ask your Lord what to call? Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words. He had already planned to wash the entire 5 planetary domain, but this man had a good attitude when he came up. He had been throbbing and could not help being suppressed by Jian Wushuang. Don't abandon the sword, this is my lover, Ling Ruqing. Don't give up the master, this lord takes the liberty to ask, what is the reason for you to kill the elder of this sect? The 5 elements god said. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and replied lightly, this person's words offend me first, then I will kill. Is it okay? When the 5 elements god heard the words, he narrowed his eyes and said deeply, don't abandon the Lord, just defend the words, and kill the elder in my case, and then just walk away. Isn't it appropriate? Jian Wushuang heard the words, tilted his head, and smiled and said to him, so, are you doing justice for him? When the 5 elements god heard the words, his pupils suddenly shrank. He stared tightly at Jian Wushuang, his thoughts flashing in his heart. He is not a stupid person. Since the sword in front of him can kill the elders with one palm, this is enough proof that the strength of the sword is not higher than himself, but he is definitely not under him. After weighing the pros and cons, the 5 elements god said, "Do and give up the master. How do you like this? We bet on the 3 moves. As long as you take over the 3 moves of the Lord, my 5 elements god sect respectfully send you away. The elder stop it and never mention it again if you say and take it." The eyes of the 5 elements god looked cold. "I'm so sorry, you and your acquaintances. I'm afraid you have to stay in my 5 elements god sect's prison." "Oh." Jian Wushuang heard the words, a look of interest floated on his face and said, "Gambling is fine, but I want to raise." "Raise? What do you mean?" The 5 elements king looked puzzled. Jian Wushuang extended his finger and pointed at the 5 elements sect standing in the center of the 5 elements city. "WWW. Novel." Said, "If Jian loses, let this fate be yours, but if you lose God, I need to take something like your 5 elements sect." "This?" The 5 elements god hesitated for a while, then focused and said, "Yes." Jian Wushuang smiled and heard, "Good." He could feel that the chaotic inborn OG spirit that he just felt in the 5 elements city came from the 5 elements Shinzone. Although he did not know why the broken bronze ancient tripod suddenly had movement after encountering this chaotic inborn OG spirit, he was absolutely certain that perhaps the way to really open this bronze ancient tripod was innate with this chaos otoki no ki. "Let's start." "Converged," Jian Wushuang said lightly. The words fell, and the disciples of the 5 elements surrounding God retreated, leaving a large area of space. "Cover up. Let this person pay his life for the elder. One move. The Lord can defeat this man with just one move." Disciples of the 5 elements Shinzong cheered. "Fu Jun, be careful." Cold as Frost said, slightly concerned. "It's all right." Jian Wushuang smiled at her slightly, then turned his eyes, looked at the 5 elements god and said lightly, "Bring it on, okay. If you don't give up the sword, then you pick it up." The 5 elements god took a deep breath and raised his right hand. Suddenly, countless divine powers raged, and in his hands, a horrifying 5-colored light ball condensed. The 5 elements sect, based on the cultivation of the 5 elements, is the basis of the avenue. In this 5-colored light ball, the 5 powers of gold, wood, water, fire, and soil are constantly changing, and the blue wood is particularly strong. Chapter 43-36. Next moment. The 5 elements god shouted loudly and pushed his right hand forward fiercely. Instantly, this 5-colored light ball, carrying a mighty might, smashed towards the sword unparalleled. In these 5-colored of light, the 5 elements of Jin Mu, Shui Huatu, one by one, are endless, constantly changing and very powerful. "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang's brow lifted, and an interesting expression appeared in the corner of his mouth. The power in this ball of light was quite good, bringing together the power of the 5 elements, and even for him, he couldn't help looking at him. The idea of this technique is good, but unfortunately, your understanding of the 5 elements is still too low. Shaking his head, Sword Wushuang grabbed it with his hands. The sword twirled between his 5 fingers, like a snake, walking between his 5 fingers. Immediately, Jian Wushuang's right-hand sword exploded, crushing the 5-colored light ball directly. In the face of absolute strength, everything is fancy and unbeatable. This? Suddenly, many disciples of the 5 elements sect, who were clamoring for cheering, were dumbfounded and their mouths widened. The 5 elements of the gods, the pupils shrank instantly, and there was a strong sense of fear in their faces. This shot, although he just wanted to use it as a temptation, didn't even want to defeat Jian Wushuang at all. But Jian Wushuang's response is too easy. 2 more tricks. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. After hearing the words, the 5 elements god took a deep breath, and his expression gradually became serious. He drank. "Okay. The sword is not abandoned. The second trick is the master's skills. You are optimistic. Mystery everlasting." Bang! The voice fell, and in a moment, the five elements king quickly twitched his hands. Behind him, a huge round of French-language pictures suddenly appeared. In this French-language picture, a towering giant tree is rooted in the soil, and a dew rain drops from the sky. Under the nourishment of the rain, the towering giant tree formed of gold and iron suddenly grows and grows. Raised just a few breaths away, it will bear fruit, full of flame fruits. Golden wood, water, fire and soil are the five elements. This towering giant tree, with Otoki's gas as its foundation, and gold earth, water, and fire as its side branches, together supported this round of five elements. Okay. Looking at this round of FA phase, even Jian Wushuang couldn't help but whispered and moved slightly. He actually saw the shadow of the kingdom of God in the equivalent of the five elements. Although the five elements are far worse than the true state of God, even a frame has not yet been formed, but it is undeniable. This is indeed a precursor to the formation of a mind. The thought of the kingdom of God, but some of the ultimate killings that the Supreme has not yet realized. If these five elements of the gods break through to the Supreme realm, or their understanding of the five elements of the avenue is leaps and bounds, and even break through several barriers, perhaps these five elements can be truly transformed into a mind of God. Good. Jian Wushuang spoke with admiration. Go with. The expression of the five elements God King was stern and pushed forward fiercely. Instantly, this towering giant tree danced like a silver snake, and the five-colored gods of light poured out. Like the rainstorm pearflower needle, thousands of five-colored Shengguang pull out countless white marks in the air. Lord Sovereign has used the magic power at the bottom of the box. This blow is absolutely impossible for this person. Yes, the five elements of the Sovereign Lord, the five elements are interlinked, endless and endless. Unless the power is far superior to the Lord Sovereign, otherwise all attack power will be consumed. At first some disciples of the five elements divine sect who had been hit hard immediately revived their spirits, and looked at the king of the five elements with full of worship. If I didn't break through the ultimate dominator, I might not be able to hold these five-colored gods for a while, but... Jian Wushuang smiled silently in his heart, then raised his right fingers together, turned into a sword finger, and then hacked away toward these hundreds of five-colored light. Now I, in the realm of domination, is invincible. A bang came, the sword Wushuang finger was cut, and no sword air was used at all, and the majestic power of the majesty was directly used to turn into a white expanse. Broken. This is not over yet. Jian Wushuang's fingertips gently pushed forward, and at that moment, the majestic and mighty power of the match was as good as the tide of the sea, one after the other, floating again behind the five elements king. The five elements are up. Tuk-tuk. After 3 consecutive muffled noises, the FA phase behind the five elements god, after only holding for a breath, fell apart instantly and broke apart. The towering giant tree, swaying in shape, is broken innumerably. How can it be? The five elements god was shocked, exclaiming incredulously. As the disciples of the five elements Shenzong said, this style of peerlessness, the five elements are connected to each other. Unless the strength is far beyond him, it will never be possible, so easily break such peerlessness. But the man in front of him, but with one finger, not only crushed his 5 colors of light, but also mainly anti-customers, and directly defeated him. Such overbearing means, even if invincible, will not be so easy to do. The audience turned into a dead silence. Everyone stared at Jian Wushuang dumbfounded, their eyes dropped in shock. Jian Wushuang looked at him with a complacent expression, and smiled slightly. God, start the third move. However, when the 5 elements god heard the words, he no longer had any action but sighed. There is no need to compare. The suzerain concedes that this suzerain is inferior to others. Say, the sword isn't abandoned, what do you want from my 5 elements sect? Jian Wushuang groaned slightly, feeling the throbbing movement of the bronze ancient tripod inside the ring of Qiankuan, and said, It's true, I don't know what I want, but I can be sure that what I want is here. You are within the 5 elements sect. When the five elements god heard the words, he could not help but hesitated, and immediately smiled bitterly. By the way, please go to the house with me and choose by yourself. Thank you so much for God. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, arching hands. Let's go. The five elements king with sword Wushuang walked towards the five elements god sect. On the one hand, the disciples of the five elements Shinzong quickly gave way, looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes, full of curiosity and awe. Regardless of age, or a sword that seems to be about the same size as its own, how can it be so powerful? The sword Wushuang is behind the five elements god king. The closer to the five elements god sect, the more you can feel that the bronze ancient tripod in Chenkuan ring is getting more excited. It is just like a child who wants to eat candy and is extremely excited. As if there is something with absolute temptation waiting for this bronze ancient tripod. If the sword Wushuang directly infused a large amount of divine power and repressed the bronze ancient tripod reluctantly, I am afraid that this bronze ancient tripod has already rushed out of the ring of Chenkuan and flew towards somewhere of the five elements Shinzong. It seems that this bronze ancient tripod has a lot to do with the innate chaos of Otoki. The sword had no expression on both sides, and the thoughts in his heart kept flashing. After a while, the five elements sect is here. Chapter 43-37. The city of five elements extends in all directions, and the trees form a forest. Among them, in the center of the five-element city, there is a huge mountain gate. At the foot of the mountain gate, the word five elements is engraved. Here is the Taoism of the five elements sect. Don't give up the sword, go in. The five elements king said helplessly. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and then took the cold as frost and walked into the five elements sect. In the five elements sect, there is a lush and quiet environment inside. Numerous students have a wise tree swinging with the wind and making a sound of. The sword is unpretentious, and it is not anxious to watch while walking. Don't give up the sword, there is treasure pavilion in front. The five elements god said. Okay, take me there. Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words, and Shin answered. He could feel that the thing he wanted, or the bronze ancient tripod in his Chenkuan ring, was in the treasure hall of the five elements god sect. From a distance, the time when this treasure hall was built should be a long time. The stone bricks made by Lingyu have become a little yellowish, and the five elements god led the two men, Jian Wushuang and Frost, to the door of the treasure hall. I saw a layer of light green mask covering the treasure hall, as the five elements god reached out the palm of the hand and pressed on the mask, and for a while, this light green mask waved a wave, and then dissolved enough passage for two people to pass. Come in. The five elements lord reached out and made a pleased gesture. Into the treasure hall, a cloud of turbid air mixed with dust rushed to the nose. It should be because no one has come in for a long time. Inside the treasure pavilion, there are two levels in it. I saw the five elements king introduce. Swords will not be abandoned, so you can choose one here. Sword Wushuang nodded and looked at the treasure hall at will. I have to say that the five elements god sect is in the universe, although it is a little-known sect, but there are not many treasures in the collection. Wushuang saw no less than 3. If the sword is not abandoned, what do you think of this jade rui? Although it is only a treasure of Chinese goods, it is fickle and can be turned into any weapon. There is also this shuttle, which can increase the flight speed by 10%. If you leave the five-planet domain in the future, this shuttle will be useful to you when the universe is roaming. The five elements god Jun one by one introduced the sword to Wushuang. When talking about some really powerful treasures, even in his eyes, he couldn't help flashing the pain of the road. However, Jian Wushuang looked like hesitated, his expression was indifferent, and his fingers kept passing across the treasure. No, still not. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and his fingers crossed all the treasures on the first floor. The bronze ancient tripod in his Chenkuan ring did not show a different response. Not on the first floor? Sir, I want to see it on the second floor. Converged, Jian Wushuang said to him. Second floor? The five-element monk was stunned, But the treasures in the second layer were all left by the ancestors of the five-element sect, even if he had no choice but to move. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded. After hearing the words, the five-elements god could not help but hang a bitter smile on his face, and hesitated in his heart. He even sighed, "Well, let alone I will take you to the second floor." The words fell, and the five-elements king, with swordsman and cold as frost, walked to a tightly closed iron gate, carefully took out a token, and inserted it into a gap. Click and wipe. Suddenly, the treasure hall vibrated, and a sound like gear friction and a mechanism change was issued. Immediately, I saw this tightly fitting iron gate, and quickly disintegrated, exposing a long spiral stone ladder. The Lord of the Five Elements, while walking up with his sword unparalleled, said, "The sword is not abandoned. The treasures in the second layer are all left by the old ancestor of the Five Elements god sect. The contents are more cluttered, and many treasures are even I do and recognize it. You can't tell whether it's good or bad, you have to rely on yourself." "Okay, thank you." Jian Wushuang nodded and walked in step by step. I saw only a dim yellow oil lamp hanging on the second floor, and looked at the old color of the entire second floor. Sword Wushuang stared at it carefully. The personal belongings of the five-element prince's ancestor, such as robes and clouds, have even become most decayed and decayed by the long years of erosion. The five elements king no longer spoke, leaving Jian Wushuang to choose by himself. Is this? Or this? Jian Wushuang's right hand, constantly passing across items. Here are the best rules of treasure. There are mysterious little things that he cannot see the calendar, but these are not the goals of Jian Wushuang. The second layer was not large. Jian Wushuang searched quickly, and a look of disappointment gradually appeared in his eyes. He didn't find the one that made the bronze ancient tripod throbbing. The bronze ancient tripod also became quiet. "Fu Jun, didn't you find it?" Leng Rushuang stood next to Jian Wushuang. She accompanied Jian Wushuang to the north and south. After thousands of calamities, naturally she knew Jian Wushuang best. She couldn't guess where Jian Wushuang was looking for something. Jian Wushuang shook his head, and then planned to leave to the five elements gods. Although there are many treasures in the treasure hall, if you change people you may still be ecstatic, but his sword is unparalleled, and he has the Terra ruins. Inheritance ransacked the ancient road to the sky, and now the most important thing is the treasures, where you can see these things. However, at this moment, Jian Wushuang frowned suddenly and saw a half-inch-long deadwood exposed from the bottom of the box. "What is this?" Swordless fingers pointed at this half of the dead wood, and the words of farewell had turned into an inquiry. "This one?" The five-element prince froze and thought for a while and said, "The ancestor said before the fall, this thing seemed to be handed over to him by a deceased person for his help, but the prince did not know what it was, but it looks like it should be just to ordinary mortals." Wushuang nodded his head, reached out his hand arbitrarily, and grabbed this half of dead wood. "Huh!" Suddenly, Jian Wushuang trembled, and the bronze ancient tripod located in his ring of heaven shook violently and fiercely, like a child who eats food, and can't wait to urge Jian Wushuang to take this thing. "This is it." Jian Wu's eyes flashed wildly, but his face was calm, and lifted the dead wood. "God, I want this thing." When the five elements god Jun heard a word, he did not expect that Jian Wushuang did not choose some valuable magic medicine or magic weapon, so he chose such a black wooden puppet. He couldn't help raising his eyebrows and said, "Are you sure? The sword is not abandoned. This dead wood is a mortal thing. There is nothing special about it, or should you choose another one?" Jian Wushuang shook his head and Shin said, "No need." Seeing this, the five elements god nodded and no longer spoke. Chapter 43-38. After getting the dead wood, Jian Wushuang didn't stay in the five elements god sect. After a few words of confusion with the five elements god, he left the five elements god realm as cold as frost. In the vast sky, a cosmic boat is galloping forward. In the spacecraft, Leng Rushuang has returned to the town of Tianbei to practice, and strive to break through the ultimate as soon as possible to help Jian Wushuang. A lone sword unparalleled, sitting cross-legged in the cosmic boat, holding the piece of dark deadwood from the five elements Shinzong in his hands, his eyes kept flashing thinking. After his tests and explorations, this piece of deadwood is indeed just an ordinary mortal thing, without any magical power. But when he poured a lot of divine power into it and scanned it inch by inch, he suddenly found some abnormalities. In this deadwood, there is a chaotic congenital Atsuki breath of finger thickness. It is this chaotic inborn Oji spirit that triggered the throbbing of the bronze ancient tripod. The sword's eyes flickered, and instead of rushing to take out the bronze ancient tripod, he poured out countless divine powers, forming a protective cover centered on him, and immediately turning over with his right hand, let Wu Weeping Sword swim around. Avoid any emergencies. After doing all this, the sword has no reassurance on both sides. Today, he is still extremely hopeless to break through, and realizes the mood of the Tao, and only touches the fur. If he wants to improve his strength in a short time, he can only increase the magic power, yes, or it depends on the magic weapon. For some reason, Jian Wushuang's heart vaguely predicts that perhaps his opportunity for enhancement lies on this bronze ancient tripod. After some thoughts, Jian Wushuang converged his thoughts, flipped his right hand again, and suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod appeared in his hands. The sight of this bronze ancient tripod suddenly appeared, and the vision suddenly occurred. At this moment, the bronze ancient tripod seemed to have a sense of wisdom, like a jubilant child, shaking violently, and the black dead wood, like a sense of induction, quickly collapsed and disintegrated. Suddenly, the sawdust flew, and a cyan light of the thickness of the thumb radiated towards the bronze ancient tripod. Congenital Atsuki. Jian Wushuang's pupils suddenly shrank, looking tightly at the bronze ancient tripod. Suddenly, the original ancient simplicity, no matter how the sword Wushuang tried hard and did not react at all, the bronze ancient tripod smashed into a masterpiece. A green light flickered across the surface of the bronze ancient tripod. Even if I saw it, the mysterious rune carved on the bronze ancient tripod was alive, constantly twisting and splitting, and then formed a small sapling shape. Oem. The sound of the yellow bell, which rang from the chaos of ancient times, swayed through the Xianhuang Honghuang like a violent blast, spreading everywhere. This voice is extremely ancient. Under this voice, even Jian Wushuang feels as small as the dust. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang had already used his divine power to form a closed and isolated space within 10 feet of his circle before letting this voice not spread. Call out. Immediately afterwards, I saw this bronze ancient tripod bounced up and turned into a blue light. Swallow what I gave and still want to escape? Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, there was a cold flash in his eyes, and his 5 fingers scratched toward the bronze ancient tripod. Suddenly, the Weeping Wu sword, who was walking around, was beheaded towards the bronze ancient tripod. A dull sound came out, and I saw the Wu cry Excalibur, which contained the power of the universe's extreme treasure, and was struck by this bronze ancient tripod, and then was whizzed and wailed. Okay. Jian Wushuang suddenly smiled angrily, slamming his right hand, and disappeared instantly. In a flash again, Jian Wushuang appeared in front of the bronze ancient tripod, and the 5 knuckle fingers extended, grasping the bronze ancient tripod severely. Buzzing. The sound of yellow bells rang loudly, and Jian Wushuang's body trembled. He grasped this bronze ancient tripod, and it felt like there were millions of ancient wild cows colliding with him. Overturned. You know, this bronze ancient tripod is still an ownerless thing, and it is still incomplete, but after absorbing the breath of Otoki, it will fly Wu weapon sword and almost overturn him. How terrible is this? Dragon blood secrets. Regardless of the horror, Jian Wushuang gave a low sigh, and the divine power suddenly burned and turned into 10 times strength. The two continued to wrestle, until after a few breaths, Jian Wushuang was worthy to stabilize the bronze ancient tripod. Breathing a deep breath, the sword held the bronze ancient tripod with both hands and sat down with its knees crossed, and the divine power explored towards the bronze ancient tripod. This time, Jian Wushuang suddenly found a difference. I can see that there is a boundless chaotic space in the bronze ancient tripod. This chaotic space is so large that it is indescribable. After a while, Jian Wushuang retracted his divine power and frowned. The bronze ancient tripod did change, but how to use it is still unknown. After a moment, Jian Wushuang shook his head. It seems that if you want to really use the power of this bronze ancient tripod, you have to absorb more innate chaos otoki. I just don't know whether this bronze ancient tripod is only interested in Ojus Chi, or as long as it is the innate chaos of the 5 elements. After some self-speaking, Jian Wushuang uttered a smile, and his face raised a smile. However, although I still have no idea how to use this bronze ancient tripod, but just relying on the gravity of this ancient tripod, brutally throwing it out is enough to crush any master below the Supreme, even the face regarding the Supreme, and then motivated by my divine power, throwing this bronze ancient tripod out can also cause great respect. Now the top priority is to find a way to refine this bronze ancient tripod and let this ancient tripod confess the Lord. Otherwise, if you have just thrown this bronze ancient tripod during the battle, you have to wait before hitting someone. Isn't it a joke anymore? Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang smiled a little and suddenly poured out countless divine power, wrapped this bronze ancient tripod, refining 1 inch by 1 inch. And when Jian Wushuang left the 5 planetary domain, in the Temple of Life, a shocking battle has already erupted. This battle attracted the eyes of the entire universe. Howl. A long moon, stars like the sun and the moon, like a 7-clawed dragon out of the chaos, soar into the sky and scream. The terrifying sound waves shook for 9 days and 10, and when I heard the sound of the dragon, the crowds watching the battle all bowed their heads, their hearts were trembling. This 7-clawed dragon is covered with black scales, with a touch of gold in the eyes, 2 white beards swaying slightly around the mouth, and endless pressure is taken from him. The blood of the 3rd generation of the dragon family, the contemporary patriarch of the evil dragon family, the dragons. Chapter 43-39. At this moment, outside the Palace of Life, 9 dragon warships traverse the starry sky, exuding a cold luster. On each of the 9 dragon warships, there are dragon people, all of them are the blood of the 5th generation of dragons. The dragon race has developed from the Chaos era to the present. It has been counted from the first ancestor dragon, but it has only developed to the 6th generation dragon race. In addition to the 6th generation dragon race that is still growing, the 5th generation dragon race goes up and is the supreme dragon. A total of 9 dragon warships, 9 supreme realms, stood on the deck. They were born with dragon heads, standing with their hands on their backs, and 2 dragon beards floating near their lips. Their eyes were pale gold, majestic and sacred, and they could not be violated. Coupled with the upstream dragging in the nebula, the coercion shocked the 3 generations of the Dragon Clan Dragon 9 for 9 days and 10 places. This time, the Dragon Clan conquered the Temple of Life, and they sent out 10 Supreme. This is not the end. In the dark of the universe, many Supreme Masters of Diwu Temple are quietly dormant. As long as the Master of Diwu Temple orders, they will kill them and give the Life Shrine a severe blow. Gaifu, do you really want to push the Temple of Life to an endless place for a sword unparalleled? Long Yan's dark golden eyes glanced at Gaofu. She said in a deep voice. He and Gaifu could be regarded as old friends. In the cataclysm that swept across the universe, the 2 men fought side by side. Therefore, he also knows Gav's injuries best. If Gav now takes a forcible shot and explodes for a while, he will explode and die. Gav's supreme expression indifferent, did not speak. 2 long black handles appeared in his hands. My monk, why not fight? Boom. Suddenly, there was a terrifying terror that swept the world, centered on the supreme gap, and burst out. This horrible coercion is like a substance, forming a shock wave, sweeping the sky and the ground, 8 wastelands and 6 combinations, full of the solemn esteem. Under this coercion, even the 3 generations of the blood of the dragon tribe have been crushed. Supreme Gap, the true pillar of the Palace of Life, is also the strongest person ever recognized, apart from the Lord of the Palace of Life. For the first time, Gav Extreme has fully demonstrated his strength. I am covered, my temple of life, have I ever feared half of this world? The turbidity in Gav Supreme's eyes completely disappeared, just like the bright jade stripped of dust, showing his glory. Behind Gav Supreme, the 4 Chief Supremes, such as Bloodwave and Giant Axe, as well as many Supremes, have also emerged with great power, dominating the quartet, and preparing for the decisive battle. Also, Gav, don't blame me for being ruthless. Cold light appeared in Long Nin's eyes, and under the arrogant howl of his mouth, he immediately grabbed toward Gafu Supreme. The remaining 9 5th-generation dragons are also directly transformed into the dragons themselves, with prestige in their mouths, rushing towards the Supremes of the Temple of Life. From the beginning, the war situation was stuck. Kill! Every one of the supreme magical powers released all kinds of glory. The White Tiger Supreme picked up a dragon family and flew fiercely. The great axe turned into a grate of chaos. The axe in his hand opened up the world and severely chopped a golden dragon. At the corner, a long string of sparks was drawn. The Bloodwave Supreme is even more horrible. With a tear of his hands, a sea of blood is directly raised, and several dragons are drowned. However, the most dazzling performance is still the new king of the 9 kings. Small Bug. He had white hair flying, his expression was as cold as ice, and he raised millions of tons of force directly, grabbing the dragon law enforcer Long Jiu, and he was bombarded violently to the extreme. The newly promoted Supreme, he showed no less than the top Supreme. At this moment, the entire universe seemed to be smashed, and countless voids were smashed, setting off a storm. Let's do it to... The master of Diwu Shrine narrowed his eyes and waved his right hand forward slightly. In a short time, dozens of black shadows emerged from the void, and his face was full of coldness. They had been waiting for a long time. The next moment, the shadow flickered and turned into a streamer, rushing towards the supreme masters of the Temple of Life. The ordinary Supreme of the Life Shrine failed to respond, and was directly used by a Supreme of the Diwu Temple to destroy his heart with a destroying spear. Before he could send a miserable message, he was swallowed by the flying dragons. After the battle, with the entrance of the Supreme Court of Diwu Shrine, it suddenly began to fall. The master of Diwu Shrine looked sneer, raised his head and looked toward the endless void, where the 3rd generation of dragons of the dragon race, Dragon Soul, was fighting against Gafu Supreme. As the 3rd generation blood of the dragon clan, and who had participated in the Battle of the Holocaust, at this moment, it was actually suppressed by the Supreme Lord of Gap, and the main hall of the Diwu Shrine saw this. Gave Supreme kill. Today, the Temple of Life will die. As long as the Supreme is resolved, the rest will not be able to achieve a climate. And at the same time, at the headquarters of Jyoti Pavilion, which is not far from the Temple of Life, the cosmic passage leading to the Temple of Life slowly opened, revealing 3 figures. Standing in the middle of is a purple-haired, purple-eyed, expressionless, seductive teenager. On his left and right sides, the old man with a chilly heart and a red-faced old man with a stern expression stood on his hands. Let's wait for a long time. The next moment, the cosmic passage closed slowly, and the shadow of the 3 disappeared at the cosmic passage. The 3 of them will represent the 9 Emperor Pavilion and help the Temple of Life. This is just the beginning. Far away from the universe, a sword mountain suspended in the starry sky. On this day, several swords rose into the sky and headed towards the Imperial Sword of Life Shrine. Standing at the head is an icy woman wearing a red diamond with a diamond mark on her brows. She is Wu Jianxian, and also the Invincible Supreme, the first female sword god. Behind her, the 7 elders stepped on the flying sword, followed closely by pulling long white marks in the air, making a sonic boom. On this day, the sword air is 80,000 miles long, and the sword is light and cold. In the universe, countless people looked up and were convinced by these peerless sword fairy styles. Wu Jiangxian's expression was indifferent. This time to go to the Temple of Life, not for the enemy, but for support. Jian Wushuang, since you have all the inheritance of Tai Luo, count as half of his disciples. So, shouldn't you call this master a maid? Just when the entire universe was boiling, Jian Wushuang was already driving the cosmic boat, left the 5-planetary domain, completely away from the prosperous area of the universe, and entered the wild place of the universe. In the cosmic boat, the sword sat cross-legged, and in front of him, a map of the universe hovered. The stars on the map of the universe have countless lights, and each light represents a star field. Chapter 4340. In front, it should be Huayang's star field. Jian Wu's eyes flickered. According to the introduction of the universe map, the crater of Huayang was filled with volcanoes, flowing magma, and high temperatures throughout the year. Except for some monks who needed to make fire, few people stopped here. If it is normal, Jian Wushuang will not stay. According to records, the crater in the Huayang star domain was formed innately. Since it is so, then there should be innate chaos and fire in it. Just try it. Does this bronze ancient tripod only need the spirit of Otogi, or just the innate 5 elements? Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, drove the cosmic boat, and hurried toward Huayang's starfield. He did not deliberately stop the cosmic boat, but he traveled all the way. He stopped from time to time to see the scenery in the universe, to see the starry sky, the Milky Way flowing, to watch the secrets of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the rush of the world, realizing the true meaning of the avenue. Along the way, Jian Wushuang faintly lingered, and sometimes realized that the avenue, maybe everything in the universe, is the rule of operation, it is nothing but real. However, whenever Jian Wushuang wanted to think deeply, he felt his comprehension, like a dream like a dew, was a bubble in the sky, and he didn't catch anything. Jian Wushuang was thinking all the way, while driving towards Huayang's starfield. It didn't take long for Huayang's star to arrive. Standing in the universe and looking at the Huayang star field, it is a huge fireball. Before I approached, I felt a scorching breath. Jian Wushuang stopped the spacecraft and closed it. He did not wake up to practice in the town's sky monument. Cold as frost, his only son walked towards the Huayang star domain. Huayang's star field is an unmanned star. When Jian Wushuang stepped into the plane of Huayang's star field, he felt a hotter heat wave rushing into the air. Mars was in the air everywhere, and the earth was roasted and cracked. In the cracks in the road, blue smoke was lit. Looking up, there are gushing craters everywhere in the line of sight. Occasionally, volcanic eruptions can be seen. Numerous lavas are mixed with rolling black smoke and then slowly flow, emitting terrifying high temperatures. The entire Huayang star domain was extremely hot, even though Jian Wushuang was a little uncomfortable. After a slight adjustment, no two sides of the sword got used to it, spreading their divine power and heading towards the Huayang star field. I saw that under the great cover of Jian Wushuang's divine power, I knew the entire Huayang star domain at once. The rest of this star domain, like Jian Wushuang's, was full of dry and barren craters, and several monks were hiding in retreat in the dark, refining firepower. These monks are not high in practice, so Jian Wushuang did not bother them, and the divine power just passed over them and went elsewhere. In addition, Jian Wushuang also found that in the most central location of the Huayang star domain, there is a huge natural cave. This cave is extremely huge, occupying almost half of the Huayang star domain, and a large amount of syrup inside it flows like a boiling water, boiling continuously, and a large bubble of fist is pouring out. Branches, like spider webs, split from the Huayang star field and lead to numerous craters. It can be said that the current geomorphological situation of the entire Huayang star field is formed by this magma cave. If there is congenital Dinghua in this Yenyang star domain, then it should be in this cave. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, stepped on his feet, and shot towards the central cave of Huayang's star domain. A moment later, a wild monster with an open mouth opened the cave and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang's eyes. Standing in front of this karst cave, a wave of substantive heat rushed, and the godless body of the sword was unbreakable. Immediately, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, gushing out of his divine power, and then plunged into the melt in this cave. Huh! Numerous melts splashed like a spray, and it didn't take long before they saw the sword's figure gradually being swallowed up by the melt. Inside the cave, the horrible high temperature was enough to melt everything, and the scorching syrup invaded toward Jian Wushuang, washing the sword's body. If it was the ordinary ultimate dominator, it would have been dissolved into a pool of blood by this magma, but under the magical power of the sword, the magma could not hurt him at all. Jian Wushuang continued to sink, and the divine power continued to explore, looking for the innate fire. At the same time, he felt the bronze ancient tripod in the ring of Qiankuan, and he was restless again. And shortly after Jian Wushuang was immersed in the melt, what he didn't know was that a group of uninvited guests gradually came outside the Yenyang starfield. Quick! In the karst cave of Yenyang, the time for the Huoyan Shengua, which bears fruit once a million years, is almost up. This time, don't let others take the lead. The 7 masters, each with their different looks, stood outside the Huoyang star domain and said with burning eyes. The 7 or 8 who dominate the realm have men and women with very different breaths. At first glance, they are gathered from heaven and earth, not from the same place. Among them, a charming woman in a red dress with a hot body, exposing her fragrant shoulders and beautiful legs, laughed softly. Huoyuanghua was born once a million years, and 7 at a time. We have brother to Oba this time, and we will certainly be able to win all 7 Huoyuan fruits. Beside this charming woman, a tall, burly man in a black robe. When he heard the words, he laughed loudly and said, 7 sisters, rest assured, this time there is this seat. Taking the fire fruit is just a matter of searching. After speaking, he paused and then said, let's go. It seems that we should be the first people to come to Huoyang Star Field, and just go to the Huoyang Karst Cave first to occupy a good position. Everything is arranged by Brother Tuoba. Yes, after 3 days, Huoyuan Daogua will float out of the magma of Huoyang Karst Cave. At that time, 7 of us will shoot all together and directly take down that Huoyuan Daogua. Others also said one after another. After a moment, the 7 of them flickered into the Huoyang Star Domain. They did not stay in the Huoyang Star Domain, and went straight to the huge karst cave at the most central location. Then they found a place to sit cross-legged, and waited for the appearance of Huoyuanghua. And this is just the beginning. Over the next 3 days, a master monk came from a distance and stepped into the Yenyang starfield, staying beside the Yenyang cave and waiting for the fire fruit. For a moment, the Yenyang starfield, which was originally deserted, became lively. Among them, there are even near-invincible dominators coming. Next to the karst cave in Yenyang, the atmosphere gradually became incomparably dignified. These powerful men who dominate the realm looked at each other, and each had a strong hostility and fear in their eyes. What no one found was that at the moment at their feet, in the horrible magma of the karst cave, the figure of a dark-haired woman in black had sunk to the bottom. This is? Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, looking at a ball of flame formed by the numerous flame magma that appeared in front of him. Chapter 43-41. Under the huge lava cave, a ball of fireballs with large fists quietly suspended, like the king of flames, separating all other magma. A stream of hot fire separated from the fireball and formed terrible magma. The sword was unparalleled, and in the eyes the mount suddenly surged 3 inches. He could feel that the magma in this cave was formed by the firepower emitted by this big fist fireball. In other words, why the entire Huoyang Star Domain has now become such a grassy situation, all because of this big fist fireball. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang's divine power spread out, and he carefully grabbed the ball of fire. Hey! However, he hasn't waited for the magical power of Jian Wushuang to touch this ball of fire, and the magical power was burned clean by the hot fire. The innate air of 5 elements was born out of chaos, and the hegemony reached the extreme, which could not be controlled by anyone. The reason why Sword Wushuang can capture Ojus air in front of it is because Atsuki's air is inherently mild, not the dangerous 5-element air, and this small fire air is only the second among the 5-element air. The 5 elements of the air of armor gold are extremely dangerous. It can be so powerful and it should be congenital. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, and after thinking for a moment, he took out the bronze ancient tripod with his right hand. No need for Sword Wushuang to do anything. When this bronze ancient tripod appeared, the group of Fireball and this bronze ancient tripod were like 2 magnets attracting each other. When I saw the bronze ancient tripod turning, I saw the group of Fireballs. It was the lost child who found his home and flew in. Suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod changed again. I saw the bronze ancient tripod on the tripod, the originally dim and obscure mysterious rune light rose, the red fire light passed through the tripod, and for a moment, the original old bronze tripod was still quite a bit dead. Suddenly, as if come alive, rotating frantically in the air, the ancient bells continued to sound. Buzzing. Buzzing. The sound of Hong Zhong and Lu Lu was ringing like the cymbals and drums of the ancient heaven court, conveying all directions. Suddenly, the entire magma cave trembled violently. Outside the cave, many waited for the birth of Huiyuanghua, and glared at each other, sternly dominated the powerful realm, felt the shock from their feet, and suddenly changed his face. What happened? What happened? What's the situation? They stared at each other, their pupils shrinking, but never heard of the birth of Huiyuanghua. There would be such a big battle. Fortunately, the shock did not last long, and then it quieted again. Under the Sun Cave, the sword Wushuang divine power is released, and the enchantment is automatically formed to seal off all the breath of the bronze ancient tripod. Otherwise, if the temper of the bronze ancient tripod comes, I am afraid that the entire Yenyang star domain will not be able to bear it. The power of the bronze ancient tripod is not fun. On the bronze ancient ding-ding body, besides the small sapling that absorbed the breath of Atsuki, a flame mark appeared next to it. The innate aura of the 5 elements has gained the second. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, divine power immersed into the chaos space of the bronze ancient tripod, and I saw that in this chaos space, besides the quietly dormant Ojus air, countless red gods fired. After I have complete control of this bronze ancient tripod, I should be able to use the 5 elements in it. The sword's eyes flickered, and then the right hand was turned over, and the bronze ancient tripod was put into the ring. After doing all this, when Jian Wushuang was about to leave, he suddenly made a flick in his mouth. What is this? I saw a vine hanging with 7 fireball fruits in a crack in the rock wall under the magma. The vine was hard to break through, perhaps because Jian Wushuang took away the innate Dinghua gas, and the 7th fruit has not yet. When it forms, it withers instantly. And this vine also stopped growing completely, and the movement that originally continued to spread also stopped. Huiyuanghua? Sword Wushuang's eyebrows were raised, and the fire element fruit contained a lot of divine power, which was of great benefit to the magical monks who practiced in the fire. In the universe, it can be regarded as a relatively good Tao fruit. This thing is not very useful for Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang just shook his head and shook his head no longer to shoot, and shot toward the cave of Yenyang. Outside the Sun Cave, the majors from Tian and Haibei who dominate the realm are waiting quietly. Counting the time, Huiyuanghua should have been born. Why isn't it out yet? Yeah, Huiyuanghua has already come out at this time. What happened this time? Those who dominated the realm of the realm frowned. One of them tentatively said, "You said, was the vibration that came out from under the cave a few days ago. Could someone go down to the cave first and take away the fire fruit?" As soon as the statement was made, someone suddenly sneered, "It's impossible. The temperature in this cave has reached tens of billions of degrees. Even if it is dominated by invincible, it can't persist for several hours. It will be burned into ashes by the high-temperature magma inside." As soon as this person had finished speaking, suddenly, the mutation was suddenly raised. Guru! I saw countless lavas boiling in the cave, as if there were any monsters coming out of it. Next moment, I saw a huge vortex formed in the lava in the entire cave. Is it that Huiyuanghua is going to be born? This time Huiyuanghua was born, so many visions have formed. Is this time the number of Huiyuanghua is much larger than before? For a moment, Everyone who was fighting for Huiyuanghua looked excited and excited. Countless divine powers poured out. They stared at the center of the vortex and prepared for it. Once they saw the shadow of Huiyuanghua, they thundered immediately to grab Huiyuanghua. Just when they were stunned and about to move, a scene that stunned them happened. I saw a hacker wearing black robes with loose black hair and a tall, bearded beard, lifted by countless magmas, like in flames, with an indifferent expression, stepping out of the depths of magma. Behind him, the flames raged across the sky. It is the sword unparalleled that changed the appearance. But how is it personal? Who is he? What about Huiyuanghua? Ultimately dominated by the second level? Immediately afterwards, many of these masters returned to God with a spirit and looked at Jian Wushuang while panicking. A white-haired white robe, a nearly invincible old man frowning, Shinsheng said, "Boy, the old man asked you, what about Huiyuanghua? Was it taken by you?" After he finished speaking, the other masters suddenly said, "Yes. Boy, hand over Huiyuanghua." "Huh, Huiyuanghua must have been taken by you. Quickly hand it over. Give up the fire fruit. It'll wait for you to die." Everyone, this man must have used some secret method, sneaked under the molten glass, and took away the fire fruit. One by one, scolded and mixed with coercion, Jian Wushuang's brow could not help but wrinkle gradually, and there was a touch of coldness in his eyes. Chapter 43-42. Huiyuanghua, I didn't take it just under this melt, you want to take it yourself. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, pressed his temper, and said calmly, "Did not get it? You said you didn't get it. What proof?" An ultimate master heard a cold hum, and stared at Jian Wushuang, disdainfully asked. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, coldness appeared again in his eyes, and asked, "How do you want me to prove?" The ultimate master immediately heard a sneer and sneered, saying, "It's very simple. Take out your fortune and check for us. If there is no fire fruit, we will believe you." Jian Wushuang heard the words, his eyes flickered, his eyes turned to look at others, and he asked indifferently, "Do you mean the same?" Facing Jian Wushuang's gaze, those masters didn't have any fear. Instead they laughed back and said, "Okay, hand over Qian Kunji, let's check. Yes, if there is no fire element, we will naturally let you go, it will not be difficult." "Well, boy, I warn you not to play tricks, so many of us. If you don't hand over the ring, today is your day of burying your bones." The threat of smirk continued to come, and the sword replied without expression on both sides, "I explained it one last time. I said that I didn't take it or I didn't take it. If you don't believe it, you can go and check it under the melt." After that, Jian Wushuang turned around and stepped on with his right foot, and then planned to leave. Want to leave without surrendering Huiyuanghua? Not so easy. There must be a secret method to pass this flame magma. We captured him and forced to ask these secret methods. Stop this seat. An ultimate master is Xiao Charm, wearing a yellow robe, twisting his eyebrows, grabbing his right hand, and holding out his right hand, grabbing Jian Jianqi's shoulder. This catch of the wind is full of divine power. If Jian Wushuang is really the second-level master, I'm afraid that under this catch, even if not dead, there will be no combat power. Just because I suspect that I took Huiyuanghua, it hurts the killer. Also, you asked for it. Jian Wushuang shook his head and sighed softly in his heart. Suddenly, a violent sword force rose into the sky with Jian Wushuang as the center, and it was horrifying in all directions. In this fierce sword atmosphere, the entire Huiyang star domain is like disaster coming, and it is booming instantly. Next moment, Jian Wushuang made a sword with his right hand, and turned his head towards the ultimate master who grabbed him. An open sky Jianmang cut out instantly, tearing the void to 1,000 feet. This is the ultimate master, who was originally captured by Xiang Jian Wushuang, suddenly changed his face, and his eyes were astonished like ghosts. But it's too late to make a temporary move. He watched with all his eyes, this extremely beautiful Jianmang, constantly enlarged in his pupil, and finally severely chopped on him. God body collapses. Destroyed. Sword spike. The audience instantly turned into a dead silence. Everyone was staring at Jian Wushuang, his eyes full of fear. Until a long time later, I saw a tall and burly ultimate master stepped out. Shensheng said, "Don't be afraid. Huiyuanghua must be in this man's hands. Let's take a shot together to kill this person and get Huiyuanghua." The voice fell, the others looked at each other, and then bit their teeth, focusing on the head. "That's right, let's do it together. No matter how strong this person is, but the second level dominates Xiu Wei, it can never be our opponents. Kill." For a while, there were dozens of dominating the strong, even including the ultimate invincible, and at the same time killing swordsman. Countless magical powers blasted out and smashed towards the sword Wushuang. Jian Wushuang saw this, and his expression became extremely cold instantly. "You look for death." Jian Wushuang Mori opened his mouth. Wu Weeping Sword appeared instantly on swordless hands. Swordless man's black hair flew up. One sword was cut off and he shattered. Countless magical powers smashed at him. Then he flew out toward the dozens of masters. "Kill the strong." A one-by-one killing has begun. The sword light is vertical and horizontal, the sword shadow is like weaving, and it is continuously cut off in the void. Countless blood descends, and the entire Yenyang starfield has become a field of Shura where the sea of blood floats. The sword, unparalleled sword, is completely opened, just like the bloodthirsty Shura. It is ruthless to slash with a sword, take away a life. For the current sword Wushuang, beating and killing the ordinary master in the same realm is even easier than crushing an ant. "No, don't kill me. Escape. I don't want Huiyuanghua, let me go." Countless people are shocked to find that they regard them as soft persimmons they can handle. At this moment, they are like killing gods, killing their lives just like killing pigs and dogs. Suddenly, wailing sounds begged one after another. The sword Wushuang looked indifferent, and the Wu weapon sword in his hand didn't leave anything. In a short span of time, the whole number was dominated by 10 and was completely killed by Jian Wushuang. In the end, there was only one tall woman who was tall and charming, curled up in a ball, her body trembling, and she looked at Jian Wushuang in fear. Just now, she looked at her invincible brother Tuoba, who was split into two by the black man in front of her. The sword had no sides and no expression, and approached her step by step. As soon as he left the Temple of Life, his mind made a decision. This time, he left the Temple of Life for his escape. But once you take the shot, you need to use thunder to get rid of it. Never allow anything to reveal your identity. "No, don't come here, let me go." The glamorous woman looked at Jian Wushuang, who was approaching her step by step. "Go to death." Jian Wushuang's eyes were lowered. At this moment he had already collected the Wu Cry Excalibur, and the blood-colored sword ons on his fingers kept condensing. The glamorous woman looked at the sword without hands, and the horrifying sword mangling turned her mind crazy. Just as the glamorous woman was in danger of life or death, she suddenly thought something, and suddenly shouted, "Sir, are you looking for the innate Dinghua Qi? I know there are a lot of innate Dinghua Qi except here." After speaking, she stared at Jian Wushuang tightly, daring to let go of any delicate expression on Jian Wushuang's face, and straightened her drums. In her extremely hopeful eyes. "Okay." Finally, Jian Wushuo paused, looked down at the paralyzed woman sitting on the ground with paralyzed chest, and asked her calmly, "How do you know that I'm looking for innate fire?" The enchanting woman looked at Jian Wushuang, who stopped her footsteps, and breathed a sigh of relief. She knew that she was right. Chapter 43-43. The enchanting woman did not dare to sell her, and looked at Xiang Jinshuang and quickly explained, "My Excellency, I'm just making random guesses because since you don't see the fire element fruit, you have to go under this cave magma, then it must be under this cave magma, there is something more appealing to you, and the method you practiced is exactly sensitive to the firepower induction. Combined with the situation of the Huiyang star domain, you guess that you are looking for congenital fire." After speaking, the charming woman didn't dare to breathe and looked at Jian Wushuang with a stunned look. It was not until a moment later that she heard Jian Wushuang's voice faintly sound. You have an exquisite heart. Jian Wushuang's slightly jaw head was considered to verify the speculation of this charming woman. After a pause, he asked, You said before, you know where there is still a lot of innate fire, but seriously? The enchanting woman heard the words, and there was a sudden ecstasy on her face. She knew that since Jian Wushuang didn't do it for the first time, she asked him, which means that her life was finally saved. Taking a deep breath, the glamorous woman congratulated, My Excellency, I am from the Holy Land. There is a huge fire pool in our Holy Land, and there is a large amount of innate fire. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and narrowed his eyes suddenly, and smiled and said, Oh, you mean, let me go to your holy place to get the breath of innate fire? At that time, I will follow you to the holy place. I'm afraid it's easy to get in, but hard to get out? The enchanting woman heard the words, and immediately knew that her speech was a little naive. She thought about her teeth and said, Sir, I know that there is a secret passage in the Holy Land leading to the congenital Dinghuoqi. If you believe me, I can assure you that I will never leak your news. After entering the Holy Land, I will take you to the congenital Dinghua without knowing it. Jian Wushuang heard no reply, but turned to look at the distant sky. His thoughts flashed on his face. He has heard of the Holy Land. According to the historical records in the Temple of Life, the Holy Ghost Shrine was one of the top forces in the entire universe before the 10,000 Chaos era, and it has a 10 very glorious past. But with the spirit after the ancestral spirit of the Holy Land fell, the Holy Land of the Holy Land could not stand up. In the recent 10,000 Chaos eras, it has continued to decline, and was even forced to move away from the depths of the universe. Came into the wild wilderness of the universe. The Holy Spirit Holy Land is said to be an immortal Holy Land. The ancient Taoism has already been reduced to a third-class force in the universe. It is said that the Holy Spirit Holy Land now has two supremacy. Even if there is an extreme, it is only the lowest. It's a stretch. After a moment, Jian Wushuang retracted his gaze and looked back at the charming woman again, and said lightly, What's your name? Heart, sir, you can call me Heart. The enchanting woman quickly returned. Jian Wushuang nodded his head and said casually, Let's go, dominate your heart and take me to your holy shrine. Yes. The enchanting woman couldn't help it, and nodded quickly. Jian Wushuang gave her a slight glance, and said, Don't be too happy, after going to Ling Di Holy Land, I hope you didn't lie to me, because you can't afford to lie to me. The enchanting woman heard the words, and couldn't help but feel cold, and quickly bowed her head and said, Dare not. Jian Wushuang said, Let this heart dominate the way, and swept away towards the Holy Spirit Holy Land. According to the Lord of the Heart, the Holy Land of Holy Spirit is not too far from here, and you can arrive in the spacecraft in more than a month. Jian Wushuang is not in a hurry. While letting Xin dominate the cosmic boat to lead the way, he sits down on his knees, silently refining the bronze ancient tripod. The difficulty of refining the bronze ancient tripod is unprecedented. Since he left the 5 planetary domains, the refining that he perseveres every day is only worth 1% of refining. Now he can only do it barely. Do not let the bronze ancient tripod escape. In the rest of the month, blink of an eye. Soon, a red planet appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. This planet is where the Holy Shrine is located. Don't abandon your Lord, the Holy Land is here. He whispered. Jian Wushuang heard his words, slowly opened his eyes, and a faint flicker passed from his eyes. In these days, Dominions is quite well behaved, like a tamed kitten, staying quietly beside Jian Wushuang, afraid to speak to disturb Jian Wushuang. Let's go. Exhaling a stale air, Jian Wushuang stood up and left the spacecraft. This time when he came to the Holy Land, there was no fear in Jian Wushuang's heart. It doesn't matter whether this heart will dominate the Holy Land people after he reaches the Holy Land. Not to mention whether there is a supreme existence in this holy place. Even if there is a supreme existence, today the sword is unparalleled, and he would not dare to say that he is superior to the supreme, But if he is going to go, he will not be able to keep the ordinary supreme. After closing the spacecraft, Jian Wushuang and Jixin dominated the Lingyin Holy Land side by side. First, the homage to the homage of the Hajj greeted him, and then he looked at Xiang Wushuang and wondered, "Elder mind, what is this?" My heart dominated with a flat expression and replied, "This is my old man. At my invitation, please come to see me as a guest. You don't need to take care of it. Let's go." It can be seen that the domineering heart is dominated by the lingering Holy Land. After she finished speaking, the two third-ranked masters stopped asking and let go. Entering the Lingbai Holy Land, 9 peaks of the heavenly mountains came into view. Jian Wushuang looked at the Lingbai Holy Land at will, joking casually, "Are you still the elder of the Lingbai Holy Land?" My heart dominated with a bitter smile and replied, "Without abandoning your lord, as long as the Holy Land is the top and ultimate master, you can serve as elders, and it is not worth mentioning in front of you." Jian Wushuang nodded and stopped talking. Along the way, the two met with a lot of disciples in the Holy Land. They could see that their hearts were dominated in the Holy Land of Holy Land. The disciples stopped when they saw the hearts of the Holy Land. "Congratulations. My heart is dominated by a docile gentleman in front of the sword without double sides, but in the presence of these disciples of the Holy Ghost, they immediately changed their secondary expressions. Don't abandon your excellency. The congenital Dinghuoqi is just behind these 9 peaks and is guarded by the elders of Jiufeng separately. After 3 days, it is my turn. You go to my cabin to rest. After 3 days, when I am on rotation, you will be taken to the congenital Dinghua pond. Can you see it? After there were no disciples in the Holy Land nearby, the Master of the Heart suddenly lowered his head and bent slightly, said congratulatingly. Chapter 43-44. Jian Wu's eyes flickered and he groaned slightly before answering, "Yes." Then the Master of the Heart took the sword Wushuang, headed towards the Lingji Jiufeng, and walked towards the 7th peak on the left. Before the two reached the 7th peak, they saw at the foot of the mountain a big man like a tower, who was constantly pacing, from time to stop and look out. When he saw Jian Wushuang coming to dominate later, there was a stubborn smile on his face, and he strode over. "Well, worries, this time you go to Yenyang Starfield to compete for the fire fruit. Are you okay?" When the Master of the Heart saw the towering man, his eyes flashed with disgust, and he returned with a cold face. "Elder Laozhan, if I have something, can you still see me now?" The Iron Tower man who was called Elder Laozhan suddenly heard the words, and then scratched his head. He said, "Hey, what you said?" The heart-minded expression of the domineering heart is cold. After he said, "Let us go, I'll go back to the peak first." Elder Laozhan nodded, just as he flickered aside. When he was about to let his heart dominate, his face suddenly changed slightly, shouting, "Slow." Soon Xen dominated his footsteps for a while. Xiao Mei frowned slightly and asked, "Langshan, what do you want to do?" I saw the thick smile on the Elder Laozhan's face slowly converge, and looked at Xiang Jian Wushuang with a bad look. His voice was somber, hesitant. "Who is this guy?" On his face, there was still the thick and honest look of half a minute ago. Hearing the questioning, Suixen dominated his face, suddenly changed slightly, a headache, and secretly said in his heart, "I knew that there would be no good things when encountering this sister-in-law." After taking a deep breath, Zhanxin said as usual, "This is a former friend. I was specially invited to come and meet me. Is there any problem?" "A former friend? Together?" Elder Laozhan squinted his eyes, and a maze of green beans flashed in his small eyes. Then he looked up at Jian Wushuang and asked coldly, "Boy, I ask you, what is your relationship with Elder Xen? All the women living in the 7th peak are you doing?" As soon as this word came to an end, Jixin dominated and looked at Jian Wushuang, winked at Jian Wushuang, and wanted Jian Wushuang to follow her words. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. When he heard the words, he looked at him and said calmly, "What's the matter with you? What does it matter to me?" The Elder Laozhan laughed suddenly and said, "Boy, Elder Xinshin is a lord who the Lord is going to hand in to me. Do you say that it has anything to do with me?" Jian Wushuang heard the words and was about to speak again. Enough. Shishan, don't say I haven't become an acquaintance with you. Even if I am an acquaintance with you, my personal affairs can't be helped by you. Having said that, she grabbed the cuff of sword unparalleled. Don't abandon your excellency, let's go. The heart dominated the elder Laozhan, and took Wu Jinshuang and hurried toward the seventh peak. Behind the two, the cup of heart beat the elder Laozhan, who broke away, and his face suddenly became extremely iron. He stared fiercely at the back of Jian Wushuang and Xin, his fist rattled. Bitch, you wait, this one wants you to surrender under me sooner or later. There was a touch of ugliness on the face of elder Laozhan, and after watching the film Engraving Time of Jian Wushuang and Xen, he snorted and left. Waiting for the elder Laozhan to go far away, the heart-minded master who has reached the mid-mountain position finally let out a long sigh of relief and quickly released the cuff of the sword unparalleled, saying with some sincerity, "Don't abandon your excellency, it's really helpless to offend just now, and I ask you to plead guilty." Before Jian Wushuang was in Yenyang Starfield, the pictures of one person and one sword slaughtering everyone were vivid. She was afraid that Jian Wushuang would be unhappy, so she would open a killing ring in Lingdi Holy Land. If that was the case, there would be no one to block Jian Wushuang in this huge Lingdi star area. Anyway, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and asked casually, "He is dominated by the heart. The elder Laozhan just now is your companion?" Hearing the master, he sighed and said helplessly, "The priests still can't talk about it, but the Lord made his own claim and gave him to me. Speaking of which, my heart dominated the expression for a while." Jian Wushuang nodded and no longer asked for him as long as he entered the congenital Dinghua after 3 days, and took away the congenital Dinghua. As for any love or hatred between the two, he did not want to understand and felt interest. The seventh peak is several million feet high. The two went up while chatting, but the speed was not fast. It took only a few minutes to reach the summit. This seventh peak is just like the elder Laozhan said. Looking up, as long as the disciples can be seen, they are all heroic female disciples. When they see the elders who want to come cold in the weekdays, they bring men. Entering the seventh peak, the expression suddenly staggered. Who is that man? Are they good old friends with elders out there? No wonder the elders have been hesitant to accept elder Laozhan. If this man looks good, he is indeed better than the rough elder Laozhan, but it seems to be lower. The second grade dominates the repair? The elder of Xin is the ultimate dominator. This man is not worthy of the elder of Xin. The sound of a mosquito-like discussion sounded, and my heart dominated the flushing of the face. Noise. Don't you need to practice? Chew your tongue here? Pan Xen dominated his face and said loudly. Suddenly, these female disciples who were sacred to the sacred place were shocked, and quickly became birds and beasts scattered. After doing all this, the master of the heart secretly glanced at Jian Wushuang. Seeing Jian Wushuang's face as usual, without any emotional fluctuations, he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. I just don't know why, she didn't know something, and where did she come from disappointed. Turning left and right, Zhu Xin dominated sword Wushuang, came to a quiet house with red walls and green tiles, and the entrance was filled with purple bamboo, and said, "Don't abandon your excellency, this is my room. You are here to rest, that is, I will order later and not allow others to approach and disturb. 3 days later, when I take the rotation of the congenital Dinghua, I will show you to the congenital Dinghua." Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, his look did not fluctuate. "Then do not abandon your excellency, you have a good rest here, I have to go and tell the Lord Sovereign about the Yenyang star domain." Having said that, I was afraid that Jian Wushuang would think more about it, and then quickly added, "Don't abandon your excellency, you can rest assured that I won't say anything about you. Go on." Jian Wushuang swayed, signaled nothing, and then gently opened the wooden door of this quiet house. Chapter 43-45. I saw that the sword light that used starlight to destroy the sky and destroy the earth was almost just an instantaneous time, and then it broke into the palm of the white-haired indifferent figure. Immediately afterwards, a shocking scene happened. This mighty sword that was infinitely horrible and indescribable was split on the palm of this white-haired indifferent figure, as white as jade, and suddenly burst into sparks like a childish dance sword on the towering Mount Tai. But even this scar of the palm cannot be caused. This white-haired indifferent figure refused to let it go. Immediately afterwards, a low, icy voice heard from the figure's mouth. "Are you embroidering the needle? Who is this soft sword to kill?" The next moment, the white-haired indifferent figure closed with 5 fingers, and the star sword suddenly broke, making an overwhelming clicking sound. Immediately, countless starlights shattered and mighty powers were wiped out. This starlight sword turned directly into powder. And the elder Fei Xian, when this white-haired indifferent figure appeared, the cricket on his face had already been replaced by fear. I saw that he took a sigh of air conditioning and did not dare to pass the channel, king of 9 and 9 calamities. The shadow of a person's famous tree, no matter before or after the supreme, the fame of the king of the 9 calamities was all he killed with a punch and a kick. When Jian Wushuang created a new myth in the universe, King Jiujia also continued his legend in the ancient sky. If it is said that if there is no sword unparalleled, the king of 9 calamities is the most in the universe during this time. King of the 9th calamity, shouldn't you be in the ancient road of Shinkong now? Elder Feishin watched King Jiujia tightly and snored. King Jiujia was expressionless and said indifferently, "You're called Feishin, aren't you? What kind of ability is it to be a supreme master to bully the ultimate master? If you have the ability, fight with this seat." "No. King 9 calamities, listen to me explain." He didn't even wait for him to finish. The king of Jiuzhai stepped on the foot, directly across thousands of miles, and his right palm was raised and photographed towards the elder Fei Xian. This palm comes out. The heavens and the earth turned upside down, the sun and the moon were suspended, chaos reopened, the entire space was destroyed, turned into a storm center, and countless space debris swept up, as if the wind was rolling down, surging and slamming in all directions. "King of the 9 calamities, you deceive people too much." Seeing that his face sank, Elder Fei Xian retreated backwards while splitting out several star swords in succession, intending to kill and stop the king of 9 calamities. "Ants." The king of Jiujia indifferently opened his mouth, but he came hard to carry the star sword, rushed to the elder Fei Xian, and the palm of his white as jade was pressed down severely and smashed into the white sword. "Ha!" A roar exploded. This magic sword with the power of the ultimate power of the rule, under the palm of the 9 kings of the calamity, seemed to be unable to bear it, and issued a wailing sound, and released from the elder Fei Xian. And the elder Fei Xian, his face turned pale suddenly, like a shooting star, instantly fell from 1,000,000 miles high, hit a star fiercely, and even the huge impact force directly shocked the star it's broken. With just one palm, elder Fei Xian lost. After taking this palm, King Jiujia no longer manages it. With the elder Feishin in his palm, the body is on the verge of collapse, and naturally there is the ordinary supreme of the life shrine to solve him. He slowly turned around and looked at Jian Wushuang. His original cold face gradually melted, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "The sword is unparalleled. It's been a long time." Jian Wushuang looked at the king of Jiujia and sighed in his heart. This guy is still as strong as ever. Long time no see. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly at him. The two of them had black hair and black, cool and handsome, and their eyes were clear, and the other hit white snow, with white hair hanging down at will, as if the untouched ant shot the fairy with deep eyes. Jian Wushuang and Jiujia Wang are also the perfect level of life. They are also from the Temple of Life. They also have their own legendary epics, but this universe and this era are recognized as peerless Tianjiao. Under the shadow of the two, everything on the battlefield became overshadowed. The sword is unparalleled. You can use a body of master to push the supreme divine realm to this field with your own strength. I was not as good as you. Zhu Jiawang smiled lightly, and then came down from the starry sky with a negative hand. Speaking of which, This seat is now more and more looking forward to what you will look like when you break through to the Supreme. At that time, this seat will definitely compare with you again. Jian Wushuang smiled when he heard the words, but did not answer, but the words turned and asked, Jiao Jiang, when did you come out of the ancient road in the sky? The King of Nine Calamity narrowed his eyes, a flash of narrowness flashed in his eyes, and some of them quipped rarely, Your swords and swords have all received invitations to the grand event of the nations in the ancient road of the starry sky. Will this seat not be available, then you not bad? After speaking, he turned his right hand, and a piece of white jade appeared in his hand. This white jade is similar to what Jian Wushuang got from Master Lan, but at the edge of this white jade, there is another layer of gold thread. Jian Wushuang heard the words and could not help but said, King of the Nine Robbers, why do you like it more than me? The Zhujiawang snorted and said nothing. Speaking of which, he has always been arrogant and indifferent. He never likes to talk to others, but I don't know why. Before the sword has two sides, he will always unconsciously reveal the childlike mind. Passing from the side of Jian Wushuang, the king of Jiujia looked up at Supreme Gafu, arching his hand, Master Gafu. Gafu Supreme sat high for 9 days and nodded when he heard the words. His expression had always changed little. At this moment he was also slightly jaw-headed, and smiled softly, It's good to return home safely. The following battles have nothing to do with Jian Wushuang. After only a few joss sticks, the 5 Supremes that have come together have been stabbed by the 4 Chief Supremes, such as Bloodwave and Giant Axe. They have never been hesitants. Once they have decided to take action, they will directly use the means of thunder and cut off the grass. After a moment, there was only one left over in the entire cold and dark universe. The 5 Supreme Masters had all died, and the star fields around the Palace of Life had been shattered a lot, turning into numerous meteorite fragments, suspended in the starry sky. Among them, only those 5 space battleships still stayed there, declared the defeat of the 5 major forces. Back to the palace. Gav supremely opened his mouth. Yes. Bloody Supreme and others were stained with blood, and the congratulations should be. Immediately, the class returned to the palace one after another, and the rest of the mess was solved by the disciples of their own life. After returning to the Temple of Life, far apart, Jian Wushuang saw that Leng Rushuang was leaning in front of the palace door and waiting for him, and his picturesque brows were full of worries for Jian Wushuang. Seeing Jian Wushuang returning safely, her tight frown just slowly relaxed. Chapter 43-46. The battle between the Shrine of Life and the dragons swept the entire universe, and almost no one in the universe did not know this battle. Jian Wushuang heard the words and couldn't help but move in his heart. After he came out of the Life Shrine, he was non-stop on his way. He really didn't know much about the battle in the Life Shrine. But this does not mean that Jian Wushuang has forgotten this war because of him. In the entire universe, no one is more eager to know the results of this war than him, and no one is more eager to participate in this war than him. Monk. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang depressed the eager thoughts in his heart, making himself look like usual, and asked blandly, What happened to that battle? Master Zhu Exen opened his mouth with a smile and replied, Don't abandon your lord, that war is over. Speaking of the Temple of Life is really tenacious. With so many top powers jointly struggling, the Chamber of Resistance has persisted for a long time. Jian Wushuang heard the words in his heart tightly. Listening to this tone, could the Life Shrine be unable to persist? Immediately, Jian Wushuang forcibly suppressed the trembling thoughts in his heart and squeezed a smile on his face. You talk carefully. He Xinzhu dominated Wen Yan and thought for a while, and nodded. Okay, but I don't know much. They are all the most widely spread news in the universe. After speaking, the Master of the Heart slowly talked about the battle in the Temple of Life. She said to herself, when she said that the life and death of the Temple of Life was severe, she did not notice the complexion of Jian Wushuang next to her, and she had already become sad. Speaking of the White Tiger Supreme of the Life Shrine, it is really awesome. One person battles the 3 top supremes, and even before he dies, he kills one of the top supremes of the Taishu temple. By the time Master Sun said that, Jian Wushuang's fists had been clenched, and his nails had sunk into the flesh, and there was no hint of redness. The White Tiger Supreme, he doesn't get along very much, but in his impression, the White Tiger Supreme is an extremely addictive and generous Supreme, and once shot with the Great Axe Supreme and others to save his life. Unexpectedly, even this White Tiger Supreme fell into this battle. Later, the Axe Supreme was attacked by the top 5 Supreme Extremes and was seriously injured. If it were not for the timely support of the Blood Wave Supreme, I am afraid that he has already followed in the footsteps of the White Tiger Supreme. The master of Xinshin continued to say, when hearing this, Jian Wushuang only felt a sadness from his heart. Although the giant axe is silent and unspeakable, Jian Wushuang can feel that the great axe has the love from his heart. In Jian Wushuang's heart, the importance of the giant axe is also in the Palace of Life, second only to the existence of the blood wave. Breathing deeply 3 times in a row, both sides of the sword forcibly suppressed the throbbing thoughts in their hearts. Gradually, the master of the heart finished talking. She was just the ordinary master of the wild wasteland of the universe, so she didn't know much about it, only knowing the last thing: the war suddenly came to an end somehow, and Supreme Governance fell asleep. The White Tiger Supreme fell, the giant axe died with respect to injury, the Supreme fell asleep, and there are more dead disciples of life. Jian Wushuang only felt a heavy stone pressing in his heart, especially heavy. Because of him alone, the entire shrine of life was almost destroyed. My sword is unparalleled, and I am ashamed of the temple of life. Breathing a deep breath, Jian Wushuang made a decision at the same time. Dragons, Du Temple, Dairy Kingdom, Qiang Kingdom, Taishu Temple, Blood Temple. I have sword warriors in mind. Today, my sword Wushuang issued a great wish. In this life, if my sword Wushuang does not settle these 6 forces, I will not be human. The sadness faded, and a sense of killing was struck by Jian Wushuang, pressing his arms and legs in his chest. No, don't abandon your excellency. What's wrong with you? The heart-minded master who was chatting and talking next to him saw Jian Wushuang suddenly feel extremely cold, and he was startled and asked quickly. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, his expression returned to normal, and said lightly, "It's all right." I do not dare to ask more, but I nodded and continued to walk towards the congenital Dinghuoqi with the sword Wushuang. It wasn't long before a large lake appeared in front of Jian Wu. He Xinzhan said, "Don't abandon your excellency. This access to the congenital Dinghua pond is inside the Great Lake." Jian Wushuang nodded his head without thinking too much. When he stepped on his foot, he suddenly blasted towards this big lake. After a muffled sound, the surface of the lake spread ripples, and the figure of Jian Wushuang disappeared into the big lake. Dominion dominated the lake for a long time, leaving the same, and went in the other direction. What she didn't find was that, a moment after she left, a tall, burly man in black stepped out to reveal his figure from the void. "Bitch, this passage to the congenital Dinghua pond, do you think that only you know it? Even colluded with outsiders, come to the sect to steal the congenital Dinghua gas. I will report this to the Lord. I see how get it. And that boy, you dare to come to my holy place to steal the innate fire, you are dead." This tall and burly man with green eyes and small bones is running slowly, and his face is full of ruthlessness. It is Elder Laoshan who follows him all the way. His eyes flashed fiercely, and after thinking for a moment, he planned to turn away and report the matter to the Lord of the Holy Land. Gollum. Suddenly, there was a ripple of ripples on the calm lake. Boom! Immediately afterwards, the entire lake surface exploded, and a large hand formed by the towering divine power broke out from the lake surface, and fought hard towards the Elder Laoshan. The Elder Laoshan's face changed suddenly. He raised his hand and waved a magical power, blasting towards this big hand. However, the magic power of Elder Laoshan banged on this big hand, and it suddenly seemed to be like an egg hitting a stone, and instantly shattered. Then, the big hand was pressed down, and the elder Laozhan was pinched, pulled back, and dragged in. Among the great lakes. Gollum. The lake was calm again, and nothing seemed to have happened. The bottom of the lake. Elder Laozhan looked at Jian Wushuang with a look of horror, lips trembled. You, who are you? What do you want to do? Learn smarter in your next life, don't be so curious. Jian Wushuang glanced at him, and under the pinch of his big hand, he directly pinched this elder Laozhan into a fan powder, which destroyed everything. After doing all this, Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent, as if he had only done a trivial matter. Gaze turned slightly, Jian Wushuang looked down at the other side of the lake, a vortex like a starry wormhole, in which a stream of heat continued to blow out. This should be the passage to the congenital Dinghua Pond. Jian Wu's footsteps slammed hard, suddenly like a cannonball, blasted towards this vortex, pulling a long string of white waves at the bottom of the lake. Still looking for free novel? Baidu direct search. It is easy to read a novel. Chapter 43-47. Gollum. This vortex is a long, narrow passage. After Jian Wushuang plunged into this vortex, he continued to blast forward. Gradually, he felt that the surrounding lake was getting hotter and hotter, and the front was even hotter. There was a flash of fire. I do not know how long it has been. Like crossing the temperature jump layer, Jian Wushuang emerged from the water instantly, and was shocked by the picture in front of him. After seeing through this narrow passage, the front vision suddenly opened up, and a huge furnace and fire furnace appeared in front of him. This melting pot of fire is huge, hidden deep in the ground, and countless blood-red flames, sticky like water, constantly emerging, burning the void. This is all innate fire. The expression of Jian Wushuang's expression suddenly burst into ecstasy. You must know that he had only absorbed the breath of Otaki with the thickness of his fingers before he awakened the bronze ancient tripod. Later, he could not absorb the fist-sized Dinghua air, making the bronze ancient tripod again go up one level. Nowadays, this congenital Dinghua seems to be absorbed by the bronze ancient tripod. To what extent will the bronze ancient tripod soar? Jian Wu's eyes twinkled, and in his ring, the bronze ancient tripod made a violent shock like never before. San! Jian Wushuang spread out his right hand, grabbed a glance at the furnace fire pool, and in time, countless divine power poured out of him, forming this congenital fire pool into a huge enclosed space. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang no longer suppressed the bronze ancient tripod, and let the bronze ancient tripod shoot out from the ring of Qiankuan. Hey! Suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod was suspended in the air, spinning continuously and making several long howls. The next moment, I saw this bronze ancient tripod as a monarch of fire, like a whale sucking water. Countless innate Dinghua gas burst out of the pond and quickly poured into the bronze ancient tripod. 1, 2, 3. In the blink of an eye, countless innate auras of fire, intertwined with each other, came from all directions, with the bronze ancient tripod as the center. Bronze ancient tripod. It's dense, covered with sun, and mighty. Jian Wushuang blinked like this bronze ancient tripod, wouldn't it all the congenital Dinghua Qi here? You know, this aura of innate fire is the cornerstone of spiritual practice in the Holy Land. It's nothing. Shaking his head, Jian Wu sat on both knees, slowly closing his eyes, and the divine power continued to flow from his arms, refining the bronze ancient tripod. This practice is the passage of 3 years. Congenital Dinghua outside the pool. Shi Xen dominates quietly sitting cross-legged. Xiao Mei frowned slightly. From time to time, she looked down at the blocked congenital Dinghua Qi, and sometimes she looked up into the distance, with a touch of anxiety on her face. It's been 3 years. Don't abandon your excellency. Why haven't you come out yet? It was a bit of anxiety to dominate the heart. It had been 3 years since Jian Wushuang entered the congenius Dinghua Qi. During these 3 years, she had not seen the trace of Jian Wushuang, but she could feel that the Dinghua in the congenital Dinghua Qi is decreasing at a speed that is visible to the naked eye. This made her heart start to tremble. If Jian Wushuang only absorbed a little innate fire, it doesn't matter. She came with the sword, and finally left silently, no one would find out. However, if Jian Wushuang absorbs too much, the result will be different. This congenital Dinghua pond is the congenital Dinghua qi that has been hoarded since the Chaos Ages for tens of thousands of times. The Lord of the Holy Land repeatedly reported. However, in the 3 years she has guarded the congenital Dinghua pool, the congenital Dinghua gas consumed in the congenital Dinghua pool is full of a number of Chaos Ages in the entire Lingding Holy Land. With such a large amount of consumption, once things are revealed, even if she is broken, she cannot afford such responsibilities. Just as she was stunned in her heart, there was a sudden footsteps behind her. Who? Suddenly, the heart dominated. Elder mind, it is me, Lord sent me to get some innate fire. With the words, a boy with a gourd came in. My heart dominated when he saw the situation, and he could not help but feel a little loose. Fortunately, it was only the boy under the Lord. Well, give me the gourd. You can wait for me here. The heart dominates the expression pretending to be bland. Okay, then trouble elder heart. The boy grinned. No trouble. The heart-minded master smiled, and immediately took the gourd and inserted it into a fist-sized hole. Suddenly, a steady stream of Dinghua rushed in, filling the gourd gradually. When the boy saw that he was okay, he said arrogantly, Elder mind, I asked the Lord, this congenital Dinghuoqi, is it all right? The domineering heart holding the gourd trembled when he heard that he didn't turn his head back, and a smile on his face squeezed out. I'm here in person, what can happen? The boy nodded his head. I didn't notice the strangeness in the voice of Lord Dominion, and said casually, Elder Minshin, do you know where Elder Minshan has gone? Recently, the Lord asked him something. Searched the Holy Land and didn't see him. Oh, Shishan is gone? He frowned. Yes, Elder Laozhan has disappeared for a while, and since you came back from the mission, everyone has seen him and never seen him again. Maybe somewhere to retreat? My heart dominated my heart, and for some reason, I felt that the news of Elder Shishan had a great relationship with Jian Wushuang. Probably. The boy is not suspected of having him. After a while, the heart-minded master will give the gourd to the boy. The boy immediately thanked him and waved his hand and laughed. Elder heart-minded, then I will not be here any longer, Lord is still waiting. Dinghua Qi. Walk slowly, then I won't give it away. After a while, the boy left, and his heart sighed with relief. Immediately, she looked down at the gate of the blocked innate Dinghuoqi again, and her eyes became more and more worried. There are still 7 years to go, and it is time to re-rotate. At that time, the Dinghua gas in the congenital Dinghua pool will be greatly reduced, and it will definitely be discovered. Time flicked, and 7 years passed again. Congenital Dinghua pond. The congenital Dinghua gas that had originally been in the ocean has shrunk in a large arc. In 10 years, the congenital Dinghua gas in this congenital Dinghua pool was at least 70% less. The bronze ancient tripod is suspended in the void, just like a gigantic beast, tirelessly devouring a large amount of innate Dinghua gas. Chapter 43-48. Hey! The bronze ancient tripod was suspended in the air, spinning slowly. All of a sudden, the thickness of each finger was like a serpent-like innate fire from the pool, and then poured into the bronze ancient tripod and was swallowed and refined. For a full 10 years, the bronze ancient tripod no longer absorbs the congenital Dinghua gas, and the congenital Dinghua pool, which was still not deep at the bottom, has almost reached the bottom. And the bronze ancient tripod that devoured a large amount of congenital Dinghua gas has suddenly changed its appearance again. I saw the original simple and glorious bronze ancient Ding at this moment is covered with flame patterns. These flame patterns flow away and spread, reflecting the dark Ding body, a glamorous red. Bursts of power burst out from the ancient bronze tripod, and the power was fascinating and shivering. If it weren't for the divine power laid down by the sword, the power would be blocked layer by layer. I'm afraid that the whole sacred place would surrender under this power. In the void not far from the bronze ancient tripod, the sword sat cross-legged, his eyes closed, his black hair hanging down, like an ancient sculpture. In the past 10 years, his refining of bronze ancient tripods has been unprecedentedly fast, and he has fully refined the bronze ancient tripods by 30%. Even, he can try to control the innate Dinghua Qi in the bronze ancient tripod, and only one ray of innate Atsuki Qi. What is this concept? Ever since ancient times, no one has ever heard of someone who can control the innate 5 elements. What is innate? It is the chaos, the heavens, the highest level of energy in the universe. This innate air of 5 elements can be used to assist in spiritual practice, and it can be used to comprehend and create your own power of the 5 elements of the day after tomorrow. For example, the previous 5 elements God, and now the Ling Ling Holy Land, are used in this way. However, it is impossible to directly control the innate 5 elements, which has never been done in ancient times. Or even if there is, but in the understanding of Jian Wushuang, it has never been heard. It will probably take a few days, and the innate Dinghua gas in this innate Dinghua will be absorbed. And this bronze ancient tripod will reach a state of saturation and consummation on the innate aura of fire among the 5 elements. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes, and a red mang flickered from his eyes. At the same time, he made a good decision in his heart, and after leaving the congenital Dinghua pond, he left a lot of cosmic source stones and law treasures as compensation holy shrines. His sword is unparalleled, and he never likes to take advantage of others. Since the innate Dinghua gas in this congenital Dinghua pool has been absorbed by the bronze ancient dingers, he will find a way to supplement it from other places. Over the years, he has fought for the north and the south. First, he obtained the Taro treasures from the Taro ruins, and later scraped tens of thousands of years in the ancient road of Shinkong, the accumulated natural treasures and the source stones of the universe. Even some of the top extremes are worse. Therefore, he is also confident that the treasure he left to the Holy Land of Holy Land will never be lower than this pool of congenital fire. Congenital Dinghua outside the pool. My heart dominated his face, and he paced back and forth. Today is the time when the guardian of the congenital Dinghua is on duty in the Linghu Holy Land, and the elders who have come to the duty have been waiting outside for a long time. What can I do now? Ji Xinzhu turned his head and glanced at the black mirror that showed the total amount of congenital Dinghua Qi, and his face was desperate for a moment. I saw the congenital Dinghua Qi displayed on the black mirror, and there was only one layer left. Once she was seen by the elder who took the turn, she didn't need to guess that she knew that she was finished. Don't worry. What other fame are you doing? How long will the old man wait outside? Outside the congenital Dinghua Qi, the elder Yanbin who was in charge of taking over the rotation took over impatiently. Elder Yanbin, it will take a while, you wait a little. My heart dominated a smile on my face and replied loudly. Her voice shuddered. The elder Yanbin snorted and said, well, I don't care what you have to do, and the husband will give you a joss stick time. After a joss stick time, regardless of whether you agree or not, the husband will come in. After this sentence, the congenital Dinghua Qi was quiet and there was no reply. Tickle. Time is slowly flowing away, and the time for a joss stick is coming soon. The elder Yanbin, who was waiting outside the door of the congenital Dinghua Qi, could not wait any longer, and his face suddenly became gloomy. Don't worry, the old man has to see, what are you doing? Huh. The next moment his right palm shot fiercely, banging on the bronze gate outside Dinghua Qi. The congenital Dinghua pond located in the Linghu Holy Land is like a circle that continues to expand. Each ring covers a ring. On each ring, the disciples of the Lingyuan Holy Land are defended by the Yen family. The core is located at the deepest place. Congenital Dinghua Qi. Outside, it is the elder caretaker who dominates the stay. Boom! With the right palm of the elder Yanbin slamming on the bronze gate, suddenly, a shock shaking suddenly exploded. The intensity of this shock is directly in the entire Lingdi Holy Land. As if it caused an earthquake, countless earths are split, and countless voids are crushed, as if they are in the end of disaster. The wind is angry, the world is discolored, and the world seems to be in chaos again. No words can describe the power of this shock. This is... The elder Yenbin's face changed suddenly, and he naturally knew that this shock was not all the inspiration in his palm. He hadn't waited for him to think about it. The next moment. A huge shock wave exploded from the congenital Dinghua pool, then swept away in all directions, and instantly smashed the bronze ancient door, then hit it severely on the elder Yenbound, smashing him close to 1,000 feet. What exactly is it? The elder Yenbin fell to the ground, terrified, exclaimed. In his horrified eyes, he saw a fiery red bronze tripod that burst out from the innate Dinghua pond at the core and blasted away. Immediately, a flower bloomed in front of him, and he saw a young man wearing a black robe with fur on his face, but not appearing rugged, following behind the bronze ancient tripod and chasing it out. Slightly longer, and want to escape again. Jian Wushuang smiled angrily, flashing a cold mang in his eyes, probing hard with his right hand, and directly grasping the bronze ancient tripod that he wanted to escape. The next moment, the sword Wushuang cast the mystery of dragon's blood. Tens of thousands of times the majestic divine power poured out madly, and suppressed this bronze ancient tripod. Boom boom. The bronze ancient tripod vibrated wildly, constantly trying to break away from the swordless hands. However, Jian Wushuang's 5 distinct knuckle fingers are like pouring molten iron. No matter how the ancient bronze tripod struggled, he stood still and suppressed it. The sharp sword energy erupted from between 5 fingers and was drawn on the bronze ancient tripod fiercely. Gradually, the struggle of bronze Gu Ding weakened. Jian Wushuang felt the fading power in the bronze ancient tripod, and his eyes were even colder. Fortunately, he refined the bronze ancient tripod by 30%, otherwise he would rely on his own strength, and he was afraid that he could not suppress it. Bronze ancient tripod filled with the instinctive energy of Manchi. Chapter 43-49. Now honest. Jian Wushuang gave a cold hum, and turned his right hand, and retrieved the bronze ancient tripod from the Jiankuan ring. Raising his head, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but stunned, and saw that the Ling Ling Holy Land under his feet had been transformed into a fragment of a wall under the shock wave of the bronze ancient tripod. Numerous disciples of Ling Ling Holy Land were looking up, staring at him dumbfounded. You, who are you? The elder Yenbin was paralyzed sitting in a fragment of the wall, staring in horror at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang said, a little guilty conscience. Da-da-da-da. Behind the sword, a rapid footstep sounded. Immediately, I saw that under the shock wave, there were also some embarrassed enthusiasts who ran quickly. Do not abandon your excellency. My heart dominated the chest and wheezed slightly. The elder Yenbin shrank his eyes, sometimes looking at Xiang Jian Wushuang, sometimes looking at the dominating heart, and finally seemed to understand something. His face changed. Okay. Don't worry, you colluded with outsiders and entered the congenital Dinghua. You are in big trouble. As soon as his voice dropped, he saw a stream of flames, dragging the tail flames, from the position of the 7 peaks of Lingzhu, and quickly burst through the air. In this flame streamer, there is a sound boom. In just a few breaths, the flame streamer appeared in front of everyone. Countless flames dissipated, revealing a majestic middle-aged man with red hair and 2 eyes of fire. Sir Lord! Meet the Lord! Suddenly, many disciples in the surrounding sacred holy places, as well as the elders who were dominated by their hearts and the elders who were bound by the heart, all kneeled down on one knee. This majestic middle-aged man is the contemporary Lord of the Holy Land. At this moment, Ling Di, the Lord's complexion, was a complexion. He first glanced at Jian Wushuang coldly, and then immediately fell on the prince, who said, "Take me to see Ding Huoqi first." My heart dominated, and no one knew better than her about the situation in the congenital Dinghuoqi. The congenital Dinghua accumulated in the tens of thousands of chaos periods in the pond has no drop now. She couldn't imagine how the Lord Ling Ling would fall into this state if he saw this scene. Yes. Taking a deep breath, my heart dominated the scalp. Then, the Lord of Hearts and the Lord of the Hearts walked step by step toward the congenital Dinghua Pool. The congenital Dinghua Pool is hidden under the ground, and the gate consisting of 10,000 years of ice and cold black iron has blocked the congenital Dinghua Pool firmly. At this moment, the gate made of these two cold black irons has been completely blown open by a bronze ancient tripod, revealing a huge cave. Numerous scorching breaths emerged from this cave. Ling Ling, with a somber face, walked towards the cave, just looking down. In an instant, the Lord of the Ghosts fell like an ice cellar, his expression completely stagnant. Innate. What about Dinghua? Next moment, Ling Ling's body shivered. In his eyes, I saw that the innate Dinghua was originally stored in the deep innate Dinghua Pool. At this moment, it was empty, and there was no drop of innate Dinghua gas left. What about innate fire? A heartbreaking howl emanated from the mouth of the Lord Ling Ling immediately afterwards. He saw the Lord Ling Ling turned his head suddenly, and he looked eagerly at the Lord of the Heart and Sword Master, his body shaking with anger. You it. Boom. Immediately, a momentum of invincible burst out, centered on the Lord of the Divine Puppets. Ling Ling Lord was instantly furious to the extreme. Suddenly the main body saw the situation, and suddenly covered with cold hair, a row of fine cold sweat appeared on his forehead. As soon as she was about to speak, Jian Wushuang stepped out and stood in front of her. Your mission is done. Leave the rest to me. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly at her, then turned her eyes to look at the Lord Ling Ling. Shinchan said, Lord, that's it, you listen to me. I said you. Ling Ling's lord looked pale, and immediately stepped on it, grabbing toward the sword unparalleled. At this moment, he had fallen into rage. Where could he hear the next half-sentence? A golden sharp gun suddenly appeared in the hand of the Lord of the Gods. He stepped on it, and endless flames appeared directly on his legs. Every step he took was a flame mark in the air. Go die! At the next moment, the Lord Ling Ling stabbed forward fiercely, and instantly, the golden lance was stabbed fiercely towards the swordless pair of skulls. Countless flames spewed from the tip of the sharp gun. Jian Wushuang saw a slight frown on his brow, leaping back one step, avoiding the thorn, and at the same time he said in a deep voice, Holy Lord, calm down first. I can't calm down. Ling Ling's lord is flushed with eyes and gasping. If there are not so many disciples present, I'm afraid he can't help crying. The congenital Dinghuoqi, but the linguistic Holy Land has a whole number of 10,000 chaos times, and now the whole 10,000 number of chaos times, all have made Jian Wushuang a wedding dress, disappearing. Who can bear this? After seeing the Lord of the Divine Lord roaring, he bullied himself again, and the flaming gold gun in his hand hit the banana like a violent storm, and like a big bead and a bead falling on the jade plate, he shot thousands of shots instantly, stabbed sword unparalleled. Hey! Numerous gun shadows overlapped and intertwined, and each shot stabbed like a roar of a fire dragon, terrifying to the extreme. Jian Wushuang turned his head slightly, facing the dreamlike gun shadow, and appeared quite relaxed, avoiding them one by one. Until now, Jian Wushuang thought that it would be best to resolve the matter peacefully. After all, he had taken away the innermost part of the Holy Land. However, Jian Wushuang's blind concession did not make Ling Ling's lord give up, but instead he fought more and more fiercely. At the back, each shot of Ling Ling's lord had gone straight to Jian Wushuang's life gate. Endless. Jian Wu's eyes narrowed, and his face gradually grew cold. Now that I'm telling you well that you can't hear me, I'll convince you first and then tell you. Talented, supernatural, puff. Instantly, a realm of power came to the audience. Under the power of this realm, the breath of the Lord of the Ghosts quickly weakened, and the breath of the sword unparalleled was skyrocketing. Gradually, the speed of Ling Ling's lord slowed down. The next moment, he stabbed a shot, and the flame gold gun in his hand was actually stretched out by Jian Wushuang and caught in one hand. Okay. Ling Ling's expression was stunned at first, then he roared, his spirit was surging, his hands pulled back. Didn't move. Tugged again. Still not moving. This? The Ling Ling Holy Lord froze, slowly raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang. I saw Jian Wushuang grabbing the flame gun with his right hand and looked down at him facelessly. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.